like you've been on the road a little bit. Maybe you can catch me up on that, because I didn't get much of that the other day.
Like, dude, we're starting from square one.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right.
So long story short, I owned a construction company in Seattle for the last 10 years. Okay. And it was a good business. It was actually growing, but I just felt like there was something more. You know what? I've been doing it for so long that I kind of fell into it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't something I necessarily chose, right? I worked with my dad for a long time. Cool. I'm making money. Let me continue down this path. Well, when I was 19, I took it completely over, one-man handyman show by myself. So then hey, let me grow this company. Let me do what I can with it. But that was something I kind of fell into. It wasn't necessarily a chosen path as a young man, you know? Whereas jiu-jitsu, I chose it. I've been doing it for a long time. Like jiu-jitsu is the one thing I feel like I've consciously said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Got it. So the last couple of years, I'd really had this feeling of like, is this really it? You know what I mean? So last year, end of last year, October, November time, closed the company down. Hey, I'm going to road trip the US, figure out where a couple things, new home is going to be, my own little hero's journey, go train jiu-jitsu across the whole US. Rad. And meet new people, have new experiences, and just like, okay, then figure it out from there, you know? So that's what I'm doing right now.
Sounds like you're living the dream.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly. So yeah, man. So that's how, you know, along this journey is like, cool, let me go meet the people and friends all over the country that I've been in touch with on Instagram, via shooting, jiu-jitsu, whatever, you know.
Make some new friends along the way.
Exactly. And here we are. Yeah. So that's where, that's how I ended up here in San Jose, was through Kyle.
Got you.
Yep. And luckily some of the best jiu-jitsu here, you know, in the world.
It's a mecca for a good amount of it. I mean, there's some places literally within a stone's throw from right where we're sitting. I know you're going to go train there later. There's so many here, so much talent, such a great community. And there's a lot of competition here too. They managed to kind of keep it, and they keep it healthy, but cool. I mean, I've been able to benefit from it myself here, so I feel fortunate.
Yeah, no, I love. So how did you meet Kyle? Because we were meeting through the gun world. So how did you get involved with that? Same.
So actually, well, our connection is through fitness. So I have a coach here. His name is Jeff. Everybody knows who Jeff is, and he's one of my guys. And I think it was late 2020. He was starting to kind of work with Kyle privately, and, you know, he's coming back to me and say, hey man, I really like this guy. He's a really good coach. He's got a good thing going. He's got access to a really cool facility. It's close. And that's a thing, because accessibility here is tough. And, you know, my story is in that, you know, firearms is always something that's been part of my life, but not to the extent that it is now in terms of training. And I take that very seriously now more than ever. And I knew it was time to kind of crank it up. And to be frank, the June, July incidents or stuff that was going on in 2020 really got to me. I was down here in my business all by myself. There's a lot of shit happening outside the front of the store. In a main street. I'm only blocks from, I'm more like a mile and a half from from city center and city hall, and there just wasn't a good situation. And I felt vulnerable, and not because I didn't think I could handle myself, but that I was very under-equipped. And I think I was probably overconfident in my ability to do so once the proverbial shit kind of hit the fan. Right. And I knew it was time for me to kind of up some things. And here's the bottom line. I didn't have a lot to fucking do because my business was closed down, right? The city was running, this county was ran one of the hardest lines in the entire state. I mean, we had health inspectors here daily knocking on the door, you know, with plastic up in the windows. We were trying to operate outside. It was just a really tough deal. We lost a good amount of our membership. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and I needed something to focus on. And fitness is weird because, you know, while people were like, I can't access my gym, the luckiest people in the world are the people that own these gyms. I have to tell you, like, it was the most depressing place I could have been. Yeah. Because I'd watched my business kind of go away. So, hit up Jeff one day, and I was like, Jeff, introduced me to this dude, Kyle, and the rest is history. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now we're out weekly.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, luckily that's how you and I were able to meet, and it sparked my curiosity because, you know, doing this collaboration, me coming from the jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing world, and actually I feel like knowing nothing about actual fitness, right? That's something I was talking about before. Like, hey, like, I've never stepped into a CrossFit style gym until last Friday when I stepped in here to train with you guys. And I was like, man, I love the vibe here. Like, I know fitness is a real thing outside of the MMA jiu-jitsu world. Let me learn about that. Let me share that with my jiu-jitsu people of like, hey, it's an important aspect of health outside of just rolling and training technique, you know, being able to take care of your body. So where does someone start? I mean, and out of curiosity, have you had other people who do both here? You know, they train both.
For sure. And it usually starts fitness before martial arts.
Okay.
It's almost never martial arts to the fitness, right? It's like the people that do both, or that's not necessarily true. It's people that are almost feel like they have to at some point. I think you just kind of mentioned like you felt like your body needs something different in order to stay healthy. So that happens, but it's not generally something that's like, hey, I want to be stronger on the mat or I want to be stronger in the ring. So I come to do this. That almost is taken care of in a lot of places in the gym setting that they're working out in. And there either is a gym there and people are about it at some level, or there isn't. Now there's any number of things that might be happening in that, you know, in that, say the weight room of that gym, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever. But, yeah, I mean, I see it's guys that have been into fitness for a long time, been athletes that are trying to kind of transition into the MMA or the martial arts world, particularly jiu-jitsu, because of what you just mentioned.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a mecca here. Yeah.
No, it's great. And for my own curiosity, it's like, okay, I had always justified not taking proper care of my own fitness health because, well, I rather learn how to fight instead of go lift, or, you know, which in turn was actually taking care of my body. And I haven't taken that as seriously as I should have over the years. How does someone start with fitness? Because, you know, the only access as a kid, I mean, 24-hour gyms, you know, the old Vision Quest, or, you know, those chain gyms. Cool, let me go in here and lift. But then you also get a personal trainer who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. So I feel like from the get-go, accessibility wise, as a teenager, you're starting at less than zero, right? A potential negative going in there with someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Well, then where do you actually start with good fitness? Yeah,
you nailed it. First, I think is accessibility and what you're exposed to first. And what I was saying was what you're exposed to first. And so, accessibility is a big deal, and accessibility to basically the facility, the right equipment, the instruction, a community that can support you, coaches that can coach you, you know, properly, not just be drill instructors. And I think, you know, with the person that's been in martial arts for a long time, particularly jiu-jitsu, because I do have some experience with that, I think it's tough to balance the training, right? Because when you're into jiu-jitsu, right, and you're very focused, it's a daily thing. It's not something you do on occasion, right? If you do it on occasion, and you're going to find out how out of shape you are, right? And how long it takes you to kind of get down the road. And I know this, once you're hooked, right? So jiu-jitsu is life, right? So it's all you're thinking about. Everything you're thinking about is solving that puzzle. And so it means being on the mat, which doesn't leave a lot of time for it, which I think probably, I don't want to say like intimidates, it more inhibits, like, well, when would I even put this into my program? So that's number one, like where do I put it in? Secondly, like, how do I do it and not have it take away from my jiu-jitsu? Right. So there's goals, right, that have to be set. And I think more or less expectations about a few things. So that's part of it too, is like kind of understanding that. But I think the bigger part of it is having an awareness of how it can help you. And unfortunately, most people don't have usually a very good first exposure. And it's changing because there's a lot of great coaches and gyms out there. They don't have a great first exposure to lifting weights or, you know, bodybuilding or, you know, whatever it happens to be. They get into a situation where it's very kind of linear, one-sided. It's how big can you get, you know, and it's all about who's the strongest, biggest.
Back and buys, chest and tries, man.
And so, you know, again, I think there's some value in that because it exposes people to the things that they could do, but at the same time, it's very limiting. And so I think the first thing is like getting yourself a high level of awareness of how getting yourself involved in, say, and we'll kind of term this like a functional bodybuilding program. People say functional fitness or whatever. It's a very broad term, but just something that's going to help you build strength, right? Continue to build some endurance, help you with your mobility. Any jiu-jitsu person knows what that's about. Your flexibility, right? Help keep you injury free, and more importantly, resilient, right? So that you're not, I mean, there's some very typical things that everybody that spends enough time on the mat's going to feel. And then there's the occasional thing that happens, you know, that happens in a scramble or whatever, that, you know what, if you're maybe a little stronger, maybe a little bit more mobile, that might not have happened. And, or if it had happened, because it's inevitable, right? Things are going to happen. You're a little bit more resilient and get back into it. And you might be off the mat, right? Because you can't, roll with that injury, but there are plenty of things you can still be doing in the gym to continue your endurance, build your strength, and so forth. So having that awareness of how it can impact you immediately and then long-term down the road. And so it's a big question, but limiting it to, well, I don't really need to be any stronger because I'm a blue belt and I'm beating every other blue belt in this class. I'm about to.
I mean, that was me to a T. It's like I didn't care necessarily about fitness because I just want to be able to strangle everyone, because if I get in a fight, I'm going to be better. It's like, well, not if I'm completely broken. It's not going to matter if I'm already hurt.
So if you think about just, I think, jiu-jitsu in general, it's all right in front of you, right? So it's all very, very much in kind of one or two planes. Like you are moving through a lot of different positions. I mean, some of the craziest athletes I've ever met are black belts in jiu-jitsu, or they were grapplers before that, like wrestlers or whatever. But thinking about the body as a whole and kind of how it operates, I mean, it should be able to push stuff, pull stuff, lunge, rotate, squat, extend, and it should have a balance of strength and mobility and all of those things. And in jiu-jitsu, we get caught, kind of just in tight all the time. We're locked up, right? And so the shoulders get a bit tight, right? You start to get, and a grappler when you see one,
everything's here.
Their posture looks different, right? They're overdeveloped in certain areas. And so I would say this, just to kind of simply think about that, because over the long term, while that might help you on the jiu-jitsu mat, it will until it doesn't, right? Until you have that weakness that creates then immobility, which then leads to a recipe for potential injury. And it shouldn't lift weights just so you don't get injured. You should lift weights so you have power, speed, right? Endurance and strength in all the different places of the body and on the mat or on the floor that you could possibly have.
For sure.
And certainly here's the thing that I'll tell you. I've never been that good at jiu-jitsu, but what I always had was the other side of it, which was the strength. And so even the higher belt levels would be I would make it tough for them. Now, of course, I'd wear myself out and ultimately find myself in a position I shouldn't be in, but strength and power, right? And your ability to do the jiu-jitsu, right? That's pretty, it's a pretty potent combination.
No, I like that. Well, I think you also pointed out something really important of, hey, I shouldn't just lift so that I don't get injured, because like doing something as a negative or prevention of a negative sometimes is hard when there seems to be so many other benefits from the positivity of jiu-jitsu, whereas pointing it out of, no, hey, I'm going to get lots of other benefits from that lifting aspect. So out of curiosity, because I've been on the other side of that, I was telling you before, like so many injuries due to overcompensation from injury, and just, not take my fitness seriously. Well, let's say we got that new person, my goal being to get people excited about jiu-jitsu. Well, I don't want them to also go through the same issues I had of not having that functional fitness or health to be able to continue in jiu-jitsu. So, a 9 to 5 person only has a certain amount of time during the week, kids, family, other stuff, right? So if you have 5 days during the week to work out, after work, what would be, from your experience, the ideal situation to train jiu-jitsu and keep your body healthy at the same time?
Yeah, I love this question because most people think they always need to do, so much more all the time. Look, if you had 2 days a week to do some amount of resistance training, right? And it would be focused resistance training. I'm not talking bench press and, arm curls, but some amount of resistance training. And this is where we get into the overload principles of, continually overloading the body and sending a signal to continue to build strength or maintain strength. 2 days a week, we know through science that's a really good place to start and maintain. Okay. So if you're just jumping into it, goes back to your original question. If you can commit to about 2 days a week, you can see some really dramatic results in a short period of time that you could then maintain for a very long period of time in just 2 days a week. And it doesn't have to be like 2 hours of lifting. If you could be really focused for 30 minutes and and get some really great adaptation, strength gains, right? Endurance gains. And the other part of that is as you go down the path here, I just mentioned some things, which is, hey, explosive power can then be trained in there over time. And so maybe one day it's a little bit more strength focused, and another day it's a little bit more power focused, makes it a little bit more interesting, but it also is totally transferable to the mat.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's great. That totally makes sense. Before we go down too much of the rabbit hole, the complexities of fitness, jiu-jitsu, all that, I want to hear your story, because we met through shooting, right? But I walk in this incredible gym, right? You owner, operator, you've been coaching for a long time. Like, what was your entrance into the fitness world? And when did you even know you were doing fitness before you created this gym that you have here? Yeah.
So, I mean, like a lot of kids, sports was a big deal to me as a kid, and I was always moving around, always athletic. I was a chubby kid, but as I got up until I was like in 7th, 8th grade, and I finally started to kind of fill out and turn into a man, but I was still a late bloomer. And the story is, and I'll just give it to you shortly, the thing that inspired me from really sort of taking personal responsibility for my fitness was, they used to do this thing, and I don't think they even do it anymore, called the presidential physical fitness testing, right, in schools.
I've heard of that. Yeah. They didn't do it when I was in school, but I had heard about it previously.
Okay. Well, they took it out for a few reasons that I won't go down. But in one of those things, I mean, you had to run the mile, right? You had to do sit-ups. They even made you do this freaking sit and reach test. That's some stupid stuff. But one of the things was the pull-ups or the bar hang, right? And I don't know kind of how many times I'd maybe done this and just not paid attention. Maybe I just thought it was like regular class we were doing. I didn't take it seriously. But here's what happened. They brought out the girls class and the boys class, PE class, and he took us out on the field, and there were 2 pull-up bars hanging out there, and they lined up the girls on one side and the boys on the other side.
Some egos are about to get hurt.
Dude, I don't know what I thought was going to happen when I jumped up on the box platform thing to then grab onto the bar and do a pull-up, but I couldn't do a pull-up. And the girl next to me did like 3 or 4 pull-ups or something like that. And the whole class on both boys and girls standing on the other side, staring. And I don't know, I just wasn't paying attention. And then all of a sudden it got really real to me. Holy shit, I can't pull my own body weight up. Whoa. This is what is going on.
Yeah.
And so that triggered something in me. And then that very year, actually, the county park system put in this little pathway near my house where they had all these little exercise kind of outdoor park course things you could do. Well, they put the pull-up bar right across the street from the house. So by next year, I don't think anybody could do more pull-ups than I could do. Cool. It was just, and what I saw from that was every day, if I just went out there and I tried to do a pull-up, ultimately I could do one. I could do like a jumping pull-up, and then I could do like one jumping pull-up with like a slow hang or a slow lowering to the ground. And over time, like I could do 10, I could do 15 pull-ups. And as opposed to the year before where I was completely mortified and embarrassed. Yeah. That kind of inspired me to really kind of look into the weightlifting, and my dad had been around it. My dad actually worked for Jack LaLanne.
Okay.
While he was in grad school, in the Jack LaLanne gyms, and he had been lifting.
I actually don't know what Jack LaLanne is.
I know, man. So Jack LaLanne was like an iconic figure in fitness and health back in the early 60s and through the 60s. If you like YouTube this guy, you'll be like, oh yeah, wow. Like we're talking like jumpsuits and he's a real character. You have to look him up. Okay. Anybody doesn't know Jack LaLanne, have to look him up. But he was also lifting in the Southern California area, Venice area, where Arnold Schwarzenegger was, and the like. And so he was inspired. So I had a weight set in my gym or in my garage at like 13, and he taught me to start lifting weights. So I got, again, I couldn't do a pull up now.
Can I interrupt you real quick? And I think humiliation can be such a great teacher, and you took it properly, but at such a young age, why do you think it was, and maybe if you psychoanalyze it years later, why was it that you took it properly, did something about it versus turned inwardly and ran from it?
Yeah. I think what that comes down to really is how I was raised up into that point.
Okay.
And how my parents encouraged me to take personal responsibility for all the things that should be my responsibility, and taking care of my health, everything from brushing your teeth, to taking care of that. Might sound silly, but you scraped your knee. Now you should probably clean that out. right? And get a Band-Aid on it, because the last time you didn't listen to me when I told you to do that, that shit got infected, right? I had to take you to the doctor. He stuck a needle in your butt, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like those kind of things kind of built up. So by the time I got to that point, like I had a personal sense of responsibility. I also had some pride, a healthy sense of pride. Like, yes, there was a little bit of embarrassment there. We might call that like gym embarrassment. If you're walking into a gym for the first time and you're not in shape, and you know that person over there has the body that you want and all those kind of things. So for me, it was really the mindset is like, I have to fix this.
Cool.
And so, and again, being responsible for, you need to fix this. Nobody else, mom can't make this happen for you. Dad can't make this happen for you. And at the same time, my parents lived a healthy lifestyle.
Cool.
So I was influenced in that sense, in that like exercise was a normal, it was normalized, it was important, but it wasn't anything extreme. My dad actually happens to have a black belt in Shotokan karate. So he had been involved in martial arts. He was a gymnast before that to a certain extent. He lifted weights. He looked the part. My mom was very active outside of work, you know, whether it was walking, running, aerobics, things like that. And we played sports. So like being physically active and having to push yourself was not unnormal to me. I think it's very unnormal now to most kids, but that I think is really where it came from. So, and
there's nothing more saying personal responsibility than you can't pull yourself up on the bar. It's not the bar's fault. It's not gravity's fault. It's you.
Yeah. And so I wasn't pointing, exactly. I wasn't pointing fingers, and I don't think I ever did that. It was like, shit, I got to fix this problem.
Yep.
And so it was about problem solving, not griping, moaning, looking for some easy button somewhere or whatever else. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. So continued through high school.
So fitness was a thing. Sports was a thing. I was the football wrestler guy. You know, I went on. Then I went. You know, I played a little bit in junior college, and then didn't play at a 4-year university. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I'm not playing. And then all of a sudden, sports was over. Like organized athletics, right? But that whole time, I was lifting and spending time in the gym, running outside, and now I didn't have purpose. And ultimately I found my purpose in the gym. I got connected with a gym owner who I was actually a coach. She introduced me to the things that could happen in the gym environment. It encouraged me down an institutional educational path, and then a different type of non-traditional path to figure this whole industry out. And so I started coaching. You know, I was a personal trainer for a bit. Then I was running a personal training department. Then I had 5 personal training departments. Then I had 50 clubs. And then I worked my way through the system. I worked for a company called Bally Total Fitness, which is really no longer around, but they're one of the bigger health club organizations. I was a national director for personal training and personal training development for them in my final year. So I was sort of traveling all over the country doing it. And it's my life. It's just what I do.
That's awesome.
So ultimately I just said, well, enough of this. I don't want to be somebody else's
time to do it
whatever.
For yourself.
Time to do it for myself. And hence Red Dot Fitness was born and evolved to what you see it to be now.
So I'm probably going to ask you a question you get from people who are complete outsiders. I think of fitness as, lifting or CrossFit,
It's so different, right?
Yeah. So what blend do you do here? Do you do some of both? I mean, how do you describe what proper fitness is to people like myself who actually have no idea?
I love this question. I think this is one of the really tough things that people wrestle with in gaining the awareness that I was mentioning earlier. And then it's been labeled. Like we've defined, when I say we, I mean collectively a culture somehow has defined fitness as abs, as powerlifting, as bodybuilding, as marathon running, as whatever, right? And it's maybe a little bit of all of those things. But you have to have some kind of an identity to maybe bring people in. CrossFit started as a community, right, that did a certain thing. And then we have, kind of what we're doing here, which is the same. The bottom line is, so fitness, I think we have to be really careful with the definition, and we have to understand what it should mean for the person sitting across the table from us.
Okay.
Right. And most of the time when somebody's coming to the table and gaining that awareness, they don't have it yet. It's not fully developed because they don't know, because they're confused. Like, well, my dad was a marathon runner and that's what fitness is to me.
Yep.
Right. But my brother's a swimmer and that's fitness to him. So I don't want to do those things. So I need to get something. I'm tired of being out of shape. I'm tired of not being fit. I'm tired of being fat. I'm tired of being unhealthy, whatever. So they latch onto something, which is good. So in terms of the blend, here's my philosophy on health and wellness. People need to move more. Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Right? And they need to do that properly and appropriately for them, given their current level of conditioning, their history of health, right? And exercise, and where they currently are, right? So they need to move more and they need to do it appropriately. They need to do it intelligently. So that generally means moving your body through space, right? And opening it up to all kinds of the different things that the human body should be able to do. I mentioned a few of those: push, pull, squat, lunge, hinge, rotate, extend, press overhead. Those are all things. How you do it, how you choose to do it, it often gets defined by the place that you go to, right? And so CrossFit's kind of one of those places where they have very specific workouts. Everybody does the same workout. It's called the workout of the day or the WOD, right? And they quote unquote scale it up or scale it back based on the person that's in front of them and their fitness level or their capacity level and all those kind of things, right? And then at the end of the day, one of the great things, but also it's the blessing and the curse with CrossFit is the competitive part.
Right.
So for a lot of guys like me, if CrossFit had been around when I told you, like, I kind of lost my way, 100% I would have probably gone into CrossFit because I was looking for that purpose and that competition. But for most people walking into this place, right? Well, when they come in, it's interesting. So you've associated what that place what we look like here, this big open gym floor, lots of rigs, lots of bars, lots of plates, lots of kettlebells, bumpers, dumbbells, a sled, turf, right? The turf, right? You associate that with CrossFit, right? And that's awesome. By the way, I have the CrossFit to thank for bringing that awareness to people for that. But we don't subscribe to their methodology of training. Okay, so when people come in here, it's all walks of life, man. And keep this in mind. I mean, you're sitting smack dab in the middle of Silicon Valley. Okay. So this is like tech central, right? And that said, people here are not BJJ experts, or black belts in BJJ. They're black belts and sitting at a desk and typing on a computer. That's the general population here. Now, there's lots of other people, like we've already established, like athletes and so forth. But the majority of the population here just needs to move more and needs to learn how to move their body and lift weights. So when people come in, here's the thing. We can take anybody that comes through that door. Cool. Most of the people that walk through the door here are looking to be a little healthier, to be a little stronger, have a little bit more endurance, have a little bit better quality of life, likely improve some aspect of their health somewhere, where that's stress reduction or decreased blood pressure, or again, talked about losing fat or losing weight, like just offsetting the body composition. It's de-stressing, it's just finally taking care of themselves. But we also have people that come in that are very much more advanced, or were advanced at one point and are just finding their way back in. But it's everything we do here is coached. So when people come in, they're either working with a coach, like with a personal trainer, or they're doing it in a class or group setting, which we keep very small. So only 8 people per group. So you're getting that coaching during that session. And then those people have the opportunity to actually use the facility to work out and do their homework or come on their off days. But the bottom line here is the fusion really comes to all the different types of people that are here, all the different types of needs, and having a qualified, motivated staff that wants to figure out solutions for each type of person. Love that. So I kind of equate that to the white belt walking in the gym for the first time. Right. It's a great way to look at it. So when those people, again, you have to cater to the area you're in. Similarly in Seattle, we were my gym specifically was in the heart of the South Lake Union area. So the new people we had to come to the gym were Facebook, Amazon employees typically, right? So we had to okay, Ivan, you can't just run a killer MMA gym anymore. So we had to, over the years, growing and started putting in the beginner classes and, catering to those people, and the gym grew and we were able to provide a quality service for that individual,
for the white belt walking into fitness with what you're describing, what are some of those similarities and issues that you're saying, hey, people sit at desk all day, how do they need to move more? Like, what's it like the white belt program you're giving someone, like, hey, I recognize this with every person that walks in this door?
Yeah, I mean, I forgot. Yeah, Seattle's very much like it is here in terms of the influence that tech has up there. And the similarities basically are people are very deconditioned. They're very deconditioned. The similarities also in the goals that they're looking for. When I say deconditioned, they just don't move, and they're very apprehensive about moving. And for a lot of these people, a lot of the people here in Silicon Valley are not from Silicon Valley.
Right.
They're from all other places. They've been transplanted in here to work for these tech companies.
Totally going to interrupt.
Yeah.
When you say deconditioned, do you mean, is that culturally those people didn't grow up doing athletics, or is it a mindset that after they got into the workforce, they just totally stopped moving? I mean, how do you describe that?
It's both. And I think that's the transplant piece has a lot to do with the cultural piece.
Okay.
Just in kind of what we're seeing here. I mean, many of the folks that we see coming in have never had even maybe an opportunity, or they were never encouraged to be involved in any kind of an exercise program, or athletics wasn't even a thing, right?
Right.
And so they're being introduced to how to move their bodies at a very late period in life. I mean, those critical years, formable years, when you're a kid, very small kid, learning how to do that stuff and being encouraged to do it. Parents, get your kids out there on the soccer field. Even if you didn't play soccer and you don't understand a thing that they're doing, get them out there and get them moving around. Because I have to tell you, I have a 9-year-old stepdaughter. We got her playing soccer a couple of years ago, and if you came into the gym and watched her, and she's swinging from the bars and the ropes and running around, setting up hurdles and whatever.
Doing what kids should do.
She's playing. It's organized play, right? But we go out. She was on the soccer team 2 years ago, and now actually last 2 years. And I'm just watching these kids walking around or trying to run and play soccer, and I just felt so bad for them because they have no sense of body awareness. They're so deconditioned, meaning there's very low level of strength, like functional strength. There's very low levels of endurance. There's very low levels of awareness, body awareness, or kinesthetic awareness. Like you're literally like your right from your left, and how do you move one independent of the other? And then also, how do you use your body as a machine? That is like, how do I even do a push-up? How do I even do a body weight squat? How do I do a body weight row? Those kind of things. They're completely foreign. So that white belt walking in, those are very, very common things.
Okay.
So, but the goals are interesting too, in that aesthetics looking good. So, I use this thing called the triangle of awareness. I've heard it referred to. I think it's the easiest way to describe it. I've called it something else previously, but triangle of awareness is what type of goal are you trying to achieve, right? So you got three sides of the triangle, and these probably won't be very foreign to people, but one of those sides is going to be your performance goals. Like for you want to perform on the jiu-jitsu mat, right? So you could have a very specific goal of, I know I need more endurance, I need more strength in order to move up the ranks or compete against these particular fellas, in this particular area of the mat. Like, because every time I go over there, I get my ass kicked, and I know they're just way stronger than me. So we're going to put together a very specific program to increase your strength while not taking away from your jiu-jitsu. That's a performance goal. Running a 10K performance goal. Right? Okay. Climbing the big hike with your family.
And setting that goal is an important aspect. Just whatever it may be, you have to set one for that.
1,000%. So there's understanding what it is, and then setting up a program around that. And then the other one is going to be like aesthetic goals. And everybody knows this one. I don't know if soul on the face of earth doesn't want to look better naked. Right. So
that's a real thing.
All right. So everybody wants, tighter body, right? Or bigger arms, or bigger butt, smaller butt, tighter abs, all that stuff. That one's pretty obvious. And then the other one is longevity goals, or we'll call those sort of health and wellness goals. And so the health and wellness goals more related to quality of life. Again, maybe it is something very specific. Look, I'm pre-diabetic. I need to reverse the situation. I've got high blood pressure. I've got anxiety, things like that. Like, I know the exercise piece is going to help me with these other issues. So here's my point. When they walk in now, what I hear them start with is those longevity goals.
Interesting.
When I first started in this business, it was all aesthetics.
Right. It was a different side of the triangle.
Yeah. I want to look like that guy. Right. Yep. Or, I want to look like you at the time, or whatever. And it was ridiculous. Like that's how people would pick their coaches. Like they'd go over to the wall. They look at all the pictures with the people in the tank tops or literally with their shirts off. And these pictures go, oh, I want to look like that guy. So I want to train with him. It's fucking ridiculous. There's no rationale to that at all. But the point of that the point of that is like people are coming in with more of those types of goals. So they're very similar in that sense. Now, aesthetics is still part of it, right? And the performance comes in with the strength and things, but by increasing or by, I guess, challenging and really focusing on the health and wellness piece, those other things tend to come along. So the other thing is I'm seeing is they're very stressed. Mm-hmm. So, and they're with time. So they think they have to come in and go like 5 days a week in order to get in shape. Yep. No, dude, let's just start with 2, man. Cool. And we'll kind of go, we'll build a program around what you can reasonably do, what fits into your lifestyle, what your family can handle you being away from them for an hour or whatever else. And in that time, we're going to get you really focused. So those are the types of things that I typically see. And to your point, you need to evolve as a business to be able to cater to the needs from a business perspective. Correct. Look, when I was a young guy, I wanted to coach just athletes, and I did for a while. But you know what? They don't stay and pay.
They don't pay the bills.
No, nope. They don't stay and pay. Yep. They generally don't, unless you're with very, very high level pro athletes. They don't make a lot of money, and they're constantly being traded or chasing the dream. Yep. So I recognize real fast, like there's not a lot of stability in this. Now, they do come through the gym on occasion. I love having them. It makes it really fun. It's, it's sexy, right? But that's not the basis of it.
Correct. I want to talk about a different white belt into fitness because I think I got lucky and found, I played sports, basketball in high school, middle school and high school. Didn't end up playing my senior year. And that's actually when I found lifting. But then I really found martial arts around 20, 21 years old. Well, the other sort of white belt who may walk in the gym as an adult is, and it sounds like you made it through this phase, luckily, where I have plenty of friends who were wrestlers in high school, or they were high level competitors in high school, college, and they maybe hit that burnout. And now they're at 25, 28, 30, way out of shape. They got that burnout. They don't take athletics seriously anymore. Do you have ways people may overcome that burnout to walk into the gym for the first time again, and or maybe talking to those younger kids right now, hey, the 18 to 22 year olds where it's like, hey, that sport isn't going to be the rest of your life. How do you get through that stage?
Yeah, the first thing is, and that's a tough one, is put your glory days behind you, because that's, like I hear that a lot. Like, well, back in college, I used to do this. Well, the reality of that is it's 10 years later, man. Like life is way different. You're way different. Body's way different. I see people like that, high achievers in athletics or whatever. I was definitely one of those guys who just wants to go all the time. And you're constantly trying to get back to where you were. So that's what I kind of mean by let's put the glory days away. Those are over. It's got to be different now. You need to accept exploring a different pathway, and don't choose the popular thing because you think it's going to be the right thing for you. Take a few steps back. Let's peel back the layers of the onion, because if you are that out of shape, there are going to be things that you're going to want to be very aware of. Like, look, dude, going from 0 days a week of working out to 5 days a week working out, even though your body can do it, doesn't mean you should be doing it. Right? You let's take an organized approach to this. Let's build a little capacity, right? Through building a little bit of your strength back, building that body awareness back, letting your body learn that it needs to recover in a different way. Let's address the nutrition aspect, the sleep aspect, the stress management aspect. Let's look at things you probably didn't give two shits about, when you were wrestling in college, because you didn't have to. Your body was more resilient then. Like you just did. The hormone levels were different then. You're giving your body ability to do things differently. It's just not the same anymore. So starting with an organized plan rather than jumping from the frying pan into the fire. I see that happen all the time, and what it ends up doing, inevitably, it ends in disaster.
Yeah, and that's super unfortunate, and I feel like at times through jiu-jitsu or fitness because of injury, like I did the same thing. Cool, well, my knees hurt, so I'm just going to go lift or work out some form or fashion every day. Well, to one of your big points is not taking the most important thing seriously is respecting recovery. And I still have trouble doing that because of my bad sleep habits, right? But that's one of the biggest things, What approaches do you find coaching people on some of those basics, yet they're top tier, important, rest, diet, right. What are these aspects that because people always want to find the supplement, the pill, let me take this because this will.
The edge.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas 8 hours of sleep probably going to solve that.
Yeah, I think that's probably, so I have this little acronym I was telling you about, the triangle awareness. We use this acronym here. We call it EATS squared plus E. So it's EAT squared plus E.
Okay.
And the first parts of that are about nutrition, eat real food. And we kind of dig down, and then there's the adequacy piece of the food that you're eating. Are you getting proper macro and micros? And you get into the T, the type of diet that you eat matters.
Right.
And the, whether you're vegetarian or you're carnivore, like there's all kinds of things that matters, and it goes to the recovery piece. But the S squared piece is sleep and stress management. And quite frankly, those are probably two of the most important things that we address for the example that you gave right out of the gate, because I don't think people do respect that the way they should. I think there's a lot more awareness to it now.
Yeah.
We've been stressed in weird ways in the last couple of years as a world, right? Yep. People they know what stress feels like. They know what anxiety feels like now. They know what worry and fear feels like. And you don't have to go very far to find somebody that's not gotten like a few decent nights of rest or really shitty nights of sleep to know that you feel like garbage.
Oh yeah.
At the end of that. So yeah, the top tier people, what are they looking to do? So, or how do you help them versus the person where if you just kind of twisted that dial a little bit, who's been having really terrible habits on the sleep and stress management side of things, you usually have this massive impact. I think again, awareness, and there's a couple of things to do. First off, I think like having like some objective feedback mechanism. So like, and I'll call that biofeedback mechanism. It can be very, very important. And very, very useful. And so whether that's just kind of self-recording how you feel through your week after workouts, after sleep, and giving yourself like a score. We have a little scale here, a little biofeedback sheet that we use that, it's on a scale of 1 to 5. And, how'd you feel? 1 being really poorly and 5 being really good. And so then we can kind of look back, and go, oh, well, I feel really shitty for today. What did I do yesterday or the day before? What didn't I do to get me here? So I think that's one way.
Cool.
Look, technology's cool. And especially on the sleep side of things now, there are some really cool things. There's the Whoop, there's the Oura Ring that will help you with, Apple's starting to do it now. I think the technology's baked into the phone. It just really, the phone and the watch, just depends on how you use it. But tracking some of those things to get maybe a little bit more accurate picture of what's really going on. Athletes really like that stuff. I tend to find like, they're like, oh, because they can measure it.
Right.
Right. And you can see, am I getting better or am I not? And if you can measure it, then you can manage it.
Right.
So if I sometimes that's a good way to kind of get somebody to be aware. But I think more than anything is just getting them to kind of sit back and get them to stop telling themselves, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Dude, you're not fine, or we wouldn't be having this conversation constantly. Right. Or you already told me, you're not performing at your best. Like,
right.
They want to go to the pill, the supplement, the new workout mode or method or something like that, where oftentimes like addressing the internal, and that's our tagline here at Red Dot Fitness. It's fitness from the inside out. Let's peel back these layers real quick. And if you can get somebody to sit down, maybe journal a little bit, or what I mean by that is maybe the coach is journaling while the athlete's talking. And if you can get some measurable data, just for a few days.
Yeah.
And if they're not willing to do that, then they don't want to get better.
Then they're not even willing to help themselves. They're walking through the door with a false idea of what they need to do to accomplish the task.
Yeah. You told me you want to win. If you can't journal this, your nutrition and your sleep habits, and your sleep and your stress management score, for 3 days, then come back to me when you're ready, and then we'll have a conversation.
For sure.
At some point as a coach, you have to draw that line, but I think that's a good place to start with people. It's just, they have to have awareness, because once that awareness is there, now you can start having a conversation, and some education can start.
Cool.
And once that education starts, hopefully you can lead that horse to water. And while you can't always make the horse drink the water, you can make him really thirsty,
Amen.
That's my goal.
Again, my goal being to get people excited about jiu-jitsu, specifically with Good for the Soul, but also in fitness in general. And I think one way to do that in the fitness realm, and this is just my own pure curiosity, without sharing any names unless you feel comfortable sharing it, do you have any big success stories, like something you're proud of that, hey, that transformation, the Reddit thread of transformations where people look at like, dang, you were here prior, 300 pounds plus, and you did it. Maybe I can do it too. Do you have any of those that you've helped people coach through before?
So I've literally coached thousands of clients, and I've coached thousands of coaches. And I hesitate with the question of kind of isolating things, because what that does is you end up putting people in a box like, this is success. Right?
Okay.
And where everybody has their own level of success based on their own personal situation. And I think that is really important for coaches and individuals, whether it be an athlete or a non-athlete, to get that your success is not going to be the same as Susie's success down the street. It's the same as like, well, Susie lost, 10 pounds on that diet down there, so that's the diet that I should be doing. No. Susie has a completely different diet history than you, completely different exercise history, health profile, and everything else. That is completely, what she's doing is totally irrelevant. Now, there might be some concepts there we can apply. So go back to the results piece and the end result in terms of transformations. I think on the transformation piece, what I would say is this. I have had, and you can even jump on our website and you can see some testimonials of people where they came, how they came in and kind of where they are now and where they've gone. And all of them will tell you this. They all came in with a little bit of apprehension and they weren't quite sure, and they'd had other experiences. And while they may have come in with a weight loss goal, whatever that was, whether or not they've actually achieved that number on the scale is no longer important for them. And they'll say that. They'll be very upfront about it. And it's more about, hey, you know what? Now I'm healthier. Now I love exercise now. And I unconsciously, eat better, and I sleep better, and I have better relationships. I have better sex, and I have, I have less stress or anxiety throughout my day and things like that. So look, man, I've trained a lot of people that have lost a lot of weight, or, have achieved some great things in sports or athletics. But I think the ones I'm most proud of, if I have to be honest, are the people that work with me. Cool. And the transformation that they've made, and coming together as a team and being able to provide the environment that basically provides this ecosystem that can deliver the results I was just telling you. For sure.
Man, I love the fact that you pointed that out on wanting to be careful about pinpointing the transition or transformation piece, because I feel like I'm having a light bulb moment sitting across from you right now, because I try and preach that in jiu-jitsu, right? It was like, hey, like, you just got to be better than you were yesterday. Like, hey, just stay on the path, and you as an individual are going to be better. But my ignorance and the knowledge that I don't have about fitness, I'm looking at it from a white belt perspective of saying, wow, like, I'm seeing this guy 300 pounds. Wow, now he's shredded. Cool. I need to be like that. And so it's almost like an eye-opening experience for me right now to say, wow, I need to re-measure what fitness means to me personally, not just preach it on the jiu-jitsu side. Like, what does fitness for myself mean? I don't need to look at the guy on the wall like you described earlier and say, cool, he looks like that, so that's why he's gonna be my trainer. It's like, wow, what does that mean now for me and for other people going to fitness,
Yeah, so there's two things. First off, I'd always relate people back to that triangle of awareness, right? And the triangle of awareness is, what is your goal? So again, what is your goal? You picked your goal, whatever that is. Now let's examine, is that goal appropriate for you? Right. And then if we've decided that it is, like, and this is through this kind of discovery process, then it's, what is the proper plan of action for you, and what are the first steps? What are the first steps? So the second thing that I said that brought two things to mind was, stop trying to do black belt shit as a white belt, right? Like, you're not ready for that yet. Like, I appreciate the drive. Like, I honor that. Like, it's awesome. What I need you to be driven to do this week is, I need you to get into the gym 2 days a week, right? Instead of no days a week. Or I need you to record your nutrition for me for the next 3 or 4 days. Like, that's white belt shit that you need to be doing before we start dialing things up. And you got, by the way, there's blue, purple, brown, right? You get, there's a long way to go here. So let's not try to get all in shape all at once. Let's not try to get fit today. Right.
Yeah,
let's try to set up a platform for success that we can then build a foundation from. And then I think there's pillars that you put in there. And I kind of gave you those with the eat squared plus E piece, that once when you find yourself getting off track, go back to triangle of awareness. Am I Am I doing the right things here? Go back to eat square plus your pillars. Like, because 9 times out of 10, if you go back to that, you're always like, oh yeah, that's the piece I could be doing better on. Cool. And you'd be surprised at how much impact that has. You know, the last piece of that eat square plus E obviously is the exercise piece. Right. But that's the piece people latch onto the first, because they feel like that's the most controllable. It's the other stuff, man.
Interesting. And I love that's the last piece of that equation, because to get to that goal, there's that lifestyle you're going to have to change. Like because whatever you're doing right now is not where you want to be. That's why, your clients are sitting there, have that conversation with you. Yeah. So exercise is going to be the last piece. Let's sit here and figure out these other ones to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah. And exercise is no less important. However, it shouldn't overshadow those other things. And what you find a lot of people doing a lot of times is overcompensating with that. Like,
I've been guilty of that far too long.
I got choked out 3 times last night, right? And I'm going to the gym 4 times a week. I need to go 5. I need to go 5. Because if I was going to the gym 5 times a week, I wouldn't have got choked out. But the reason you got choked out is because you're gassing out. Like your fitness sucks, or maybe it isn't your fitness. Maybe your nutrition sucks. Maybe your sleep sucks. Maybe your stress management sucks. Yep. Maybe you're eating enough calories, but your macronutrient profile is way off, right? Yeah. You're not eating enough protein, not eating enough carbohydrate, not eating enough fat. Like, there's always these things that we can dial, but everybody wants to turn the little dial. Like, is it creatine? Is it, is it a pre-workout that I need? Like, is it steroids? Is it, it's this other hormonal supplement that I need over here? Or is it this new gadget? It's none of those things. Mm-hmm. Stop with that bullshit. Yeah, once you get to peak performance, right? Or at least once you started to manage adequately your eat squared plus E in my book, then we can start playing with those things, because there's a lot of benefit in a lot of supplements. Yeah. There's some that I'm really into, but
for sure
not until we're
well, man. And it's funny because again, this is one of those conversations where we're going to put it out there for the world, but now it's hitting me deep in my core, because I've always tried to compensate, whether it's, hey, being a young kid, I'm 29 years old right now. Well, my entire 20s of training, I've been able to go to the gym 7 times a week off little sleep. Well, that habit hasn't helped me, and it's made me injured. So then I start contemplating, well, how can I keep redlining myself? Do I know some guys who are in their 50s that, hey, tea is the right move for them because their hormones are starting to drop and they're doing their fitness properly.
Absolutely.
Well, do I start doing that now because I'm so broken? And everyone looks at me like I'm crazy, which they should, and I shouldn't be doing that. And I'm not at the moment. But my first instinct sometimes is to go to like, cool, what is that thing outside of myself that's going to help me get or keep this redlining aspect? Whereas like, nope, dial it back down, and that's a hard thing to do sometimes.
Isn't that crazy, man? Like, we always want to put something more on the plate when we should really just be taking stuff off the plate. With clients, we see that all the time. A lot of times by the time they get to us here, go back to the Silicon Valley, high stress, tech, whatever, kids, life, family, and all that stuff, they're looking to add something on, right, to the table to make them feel better. And that's often, again, going back, it starts with exercise, because it seems like the most logical route to do that. And a lot of times it is. And I don't want to take away from like, well, we're not going to exercise until we address all these other things.
Right.
No, it needs to come together. Like, we just need to be aware, again, coming back to that level of awareness on your situation and what you can do. And again, it's not like, well, let's I have 5 days a week, so let's train 5 days a week. Not chill, dude. Let's establish some consistency here. Let's make a commitment. Let's establish some consistency. And then we'll see where this goes. We can evolve it. We can always evolve.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're trying to twist all these dials at one time and toggle all these switches, or, throttle up, throttle back all at the same time, or in your case, like you're trying to overcompensate, not in your case, but in your example of, should I be getting, HRT when, to offset my recovery, which I know I'm not getting, when the answer is, maybe you wouldn't have a hormone issue if you fucking ate right and got enough sleep.
This is 100% talking right to me.
I mean, that was my problem. Yeah. I mean, I've been down that path, man. And I can tell you, like, it's been supremely helpful, to have to go through that process to really know. But the bottom line is, I redlined myself to the point where I had nothing left in the tank, and injuries and health issues and whatever. And I thought the answer was HRT, when the reality is I had way more impact over any of that stuff through eat squared plus E.
Yep. No, dude, I feel that, man. Well, at this stage in your career in fitness, you're a black belt in fitness. I would consider you one, right? What has fitness been at the different stages of your life since, traveling the country, training? What were some of your goals and how were you accomplishing it then? And then maybe how's it shifted to where you're at now?
Yeah. So huge evolution there. I kind of gave you my early story. I was a power and strength athlete. Yep. That was always something I was good at doing. I really enjoyed it. It was fun and I knew how to do that. Right. Yeah. So it was really good. And then that was over. And so what do you do? Like I'm not playing to be a power and strength athlete anymore. Martial arts was not as popular as it is now. It wasn't something I really wanted to go down. I had a friend that was into judo. And I was like, it's just not for me. I like being in the gym. Yep. Right. So again, I got introduced to kind of the world of big commercial gyms. I was out of the strength and conditioning room and in the commercial gyms, and bodybuilding was a huge thing back in the late 90s. Right. I mean, that was just kind of what you did. And I knew how to lift weights and I knew how to kind of change my body at some point. So I got bit by that bug for a little while, and I tried my hand on it and learned really quickly two things. One, I'm not built for this. Like physically, I'm not, I'm not built for this. Like, can I make changes? Yeah. But am I ever going to be on stage uber competitive? I could compete with a bunch of amateurs, but that was going to be the best I could ever do. Right. Unless I was willing to do a few other things, which was only going to get me maybe to one next level. It's definitely not going to dial me up, which was do a bunch of things that I didn't want to do. Yep. Right. To my body and to my life and things like that. So during that time though is when I started coaching. So as I was getting my education under my belt, physiology, anatomy, nutrition, all the psychology, starting to kind of build this foundation of how to make better decisions about my fitness. Mm-hmm. And along the way, so I was like, okay, well, I did make a play. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this for a year. I'm going to train, no competing. I'm just going to train. I got to get bigger because you can't be on stage at 6 feet tall at 200 pounds. The guys that are winning are 240, the guys that are hanging in there are like 230. Could I put on 10 pounds of muscle in a year? Yeah, I could do that. Let's get after it. Well, at this point, so now I'm carrying 260, right? Wow. At the time I got married, we'd gone on this little trip. I think we were down in like the Grand Canyon or something. And we're doing some hiking. I got about 2 miles out and my whole body is like shutting down. It's like, I was like, what in the hell? Like I was huffing and puffing. I was wheezing. My knees hurt. My shoulders hurt. Like my feet hurt. I was like, what the hell? Like you're fucking 260 pounds, dude. Like you're not built that way. Like you need to stop that. Literally on the spot, I decided to quit. I was like, I'm done. I am done. I'm not doing this immediately. Came back. When I was a kid, was into bicycling. Okay. And I was like, I really missed that. And so I went out, I promptly bought a bicycle and I started riding it. And then the next 2 or 3 years was about pulling all that weight off. And then I got into multi-sport. I was doing some triathlon, and at the time adventure racing was really important. So think of like Spartan racing over a 3-day period. Okay. Yep. So it was like
real quick. Yeah. It was, you hear about the process of gaining weight. You spent, however long lifting, protein, everything you need to do. Was offloading that weight a difficult process? Because I don't know what the inverse of that would be like.
So it's a good question. So I think I had enough knowledge of nutrition to know, like, one, it's caloric deficit, right? But at the same time, managing that caloric deficit so you don't go so far into the tank that your body starts to downregulate things. I still liked lifting weights, so I was still sending the signal from a physiological perspective or in a hormonal perspective to maintain a certain amount of muscle mass, but I wasn't eating 8,000 calories a day anymore. And I was starting to ride my bike and I was slowly starting to make my way out.
So it was going to come off. Yeah.
It's going to come off. I was doing it very slowly. I mean, I told you it took like 2-3 years. So, to kind of bring it way down. And then I started getting into kind of a competitive area where it was a little tough to keep it on, because I was training so much. It was like 3 hours a day of training. It's like to go to, the gym that many
hours. Eat whatever you want, drink whatever you want, because you can't keep up with that deficit.
Yeah. And so that's just not realistic for me now. And probably, for a time there, it wasn't then because I was working and trying to balance it. But so I got way into kind of endurance and adventure sport, if you will, multi-sport there for a while. Taught me a whole other type of training. Had to make all the mistakes there that I did, previously. But again, given my background, I probably had a few more resources and knew how to research some things and do some stuff. But, I did that for a while. And then as a professional, things got really busy and I ended up having to travel around the country. And so can't get those bike rides in as often as you used to. Finding a pool to do your swimming in was a little bit tougher. So it was like running and then continuing to lift maybe 2-3 days a week. But when I say lift, I mean resistance train. It wasn't really training for any levels of strength. It was more maintenance, and kind of held on to that. And then, interestingly, work got very, very stressful. And I tried to overcompensate with exercise. And that speaks to the part where I ran myself into the ground over time. I completely ran myself into a hole, into the tank so poorly that, I found myself very unhealthy at a lot of levels. And, gut health was terrible. Hormonal health was terrible. Stress was immeasurable. It was so high. A lot of things. There was a divorce in there. There was, changing jobs. There was 2008 and the financial issues that were happening. There's so many things. So for me, coming back was really kind of finding a happy medium to that all. So for me now, staying in shape, the journey is really, I'll resistance train about 2 to 3 days a week. I'm not trying to get under any heavy barbells anymore or anything like that. I do use barbells and I work out, but I'm not trying to impress anybody. I don't need to. I've been able to maintain a certain level of strength over my days that works for me, but I have injuries. I got back onto the jiu-jitsu mat a few times over that time as of late, in trying to kind of make a comeback, and all the things that I've done to my body, my back. I actually intended on posting these x-rays on, got
jacked up back.
Oh, dude! If you look at it, you're just like, what? It just doesn't look. You don't have to be an orthopedic surgeon to tell. Oh, that shit's fucked. But it put me down for a week, and the jiu-jitsu got taken away from me, which was actually a very, very tough time in my life. This was going back about a year, but so I don't roll like I used to. It has to be really, really controlled environment for me to do that. But I just, I have a gym, obviously. I just, I'll get out on the mountain bike. I'll lift. I'll try and stay active, hiking.
Cool, man. I love that because you've been through every cycle of fitness, which to me is really cool and inspiring to see. Hey, you're obviously dude who's in shape. And how old are you?
I'm 47. Just turned 47.
Yeah, you look great. You're in great shape. It's like, cool. My biggest fear is being out of shape as an older man. I want to have kids one day that I can run around with and enjoy their company and be a role model to my own kids or other people out there in the world. So it's cool to see. I think one of the biggest things that I was going to ask you is we on the jiu-jitsu mat, we talk about, hey, the moment you start having to teach jiu-jitsu, you're going to learn more about jiu-jitsu to yourself, right? And I feel blessed because of running construction company. My entire job was coaching, always teaching new people the trades, the new kids the trades, right? So it's a skill I developed, but also I think I was naturally good at it because I just happened to be doing it. And then that transferred to jiu-jitsu. And I noticed when I started coaching, wow, I'm learning techniques better because I have to explain it to a room of 30 people. And it's super embarrassing that if I don't know the technique and I'm explaining
there's a little pressure.
There's a little pressure. So they may not know it at the moment, but then I'm gonna go back and study it so I can come back next week and teach it better. So what about when you really started coaching in the fitness world and the different evolutions of the knowledge that you learned made it better for yourself? Did you notice like, hey, cool, instead of just doing fitness, and I guess sometimes that question seems difficult because from the outside, fitness always seems like a personal journey. Like to be fit, I have to go learn everything about fitness. From the outside of jiu-jitsu, it's like, well, if I just go to a jiu-jitsu class, I'm going to learn it because someone's there coaching. But fitness, because of the commercial gyms, I have to go learn everything about fitness myself to then apply it to a 24-hour fitness or LA Fitness, something like that. So I don't. I kind of went on a tangent on that one.
So no, it's good, and I like that question, and you're right. Like, it's so funny. It brings back a lot of memories. Like, I can relate this to jiu-jitsu. Is like, first off, as a coach, when I started coaching, I was really passionate about it, and the thing that I was probably the most passionate about was helping people, because when they got something out of it, I saw that light bulb go on, and they were making their accomplishments or achieving things, and it was through guidance and coaching that I was giving them, like that felt really good. Right? And I think that has to be in there. And if it's not in there, this is never going to be a good idea for you. Right. So that was part of it. And so once that started to happen, then I was really encouraged, like, well, I want to help all the people in the best way that I can. I don't want to just help, whatever 30-year-old soccer mom over here who just wants to take off the baby weight and feel better and she wants to do a little bodybuilding, and I can do this stuff with their nutrition and whatever else. But I wanted to help the person that came in the gym who had the total knee replacement, right?
Yep.
And the bodybuilder over there in the corner who was looking to put on 5 more pounds in the next 3 months or whatever, and he really needed to bring out his shoulders or his back, whatever, right?
Yep.
Like I was just like, oh man, there's a lot to learn here. And the journey really has been that. It's really been like, first off, recognizing you're never going to know it all. So it is a journey. And so relating it to the other part of it is like, there is going to be a time though, where you're going to think you got this, right? And then there will also be a time when you recognize, oh, I don't got this, right? Like, and so I can kind of relate this to like the blue belt.
Yep.
Right. Like, so he spent his time on the mat getting through the white belt stuff. And now he's no longer wearing that white belt. And so when the white belts walk into the room or the other blue belts or whatever, right, he or she's on the floor and she's like, I got this. Like, I got this. And the next thing you know, a white belt ties you up like a pretzel and you're like, oh fuck, what happened there? Or then you step over, to the brown belts or a black belt in the room, asks you to spar and you get taught a real fast lesson. My point of this is I learned through the education and through my journey, which was through the practical application of the coaching and the actual training. And I'm going to tangent here for a second. And I think this is a big missing piece from coaching. And I think it's relatable to jiu-jitsu too. Again, everybody wants to go from white belt to black belt and they forget about the process that it takes to get there. And part of that process, like if you go to a particular jiu-jitsu school, they have a curriculum, right, that they're going to teach. That curriculum is really important. Well, in the process of getting stronger, right, getting bigger, getting more powerful, getting faster, whatever that, again, go to the performance side of that triangle, the triangle of awareness, there are periods that you can train or that you should be organizing your training program and process into. And you need to be patient with that, right? And you need to actually go through there to know what that feels like. Yeah. Just like going through all the white belt training and then all the blue belt training and, all those things so that you know what it feels like. So, and then part of it is like having to answer questions about it, like reviewing it, like in your case, teaching it, like being held responsible for, hey, I need you to teach this guy this stuff. And you're like, oh, now I have a higher level of responsibility to it. So I think a lot of that's missing in coaching today. People are just trying to get to the end without filling in the middle pieces. And so my kind of, in my journey, it was making these steps along the way. And what I recognized is at one point, once there was kind of this, tipping point. I was like, oh shit, I have to go back and apologize to all those people I've been coaching for like the last 2 years because I was so wrong. But yet I was so confident. And that's another thing. Like go back to the white belt, blue belt. Like they really believe what they're saying and doing is the right thing. No, this is it, man. Like they just don't know what they don't know. There's an unconscious incompetence to what they don't know. And then there's a conscious incompetence that ultimately comes along there. It's like, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Once that happens, right, for a coach or, an athlete or somebody along their fitness journey, once you have that conscious incompetence, like I don't know what I don't know, that is when I find people really start to get it because then they learn how to answer or ask the second and third question, not just the first one. They process, they think about it, and they're not as fearful about trying the next thing, whatever that is, and sticking with it for a while to then be able to analyze and, kind of process what just happened and did this work and not freak out about it. The issue becomes the consistency, right? If you can stay consistent, that you'll get so far, with that in the journey. And so for me, there was a consistency in this learning process and always seeking the next thing, and never being afraid.
Cool. Man, I love that. Well, I'm going to do you one better on your example of, hey, the white to blue belt. Most black belts will tell you this, like the actual learning of jiu-jitsu starts at black belt. Dude, and it's wild. And I'm not there yet, but I've just recently, because of starting on this journey, traveling country, train jiu-jitsu at a lot of different gyms where I'm now training at specific jiu-jitsu gyms only a lot of the times, and realizing, wow, I spent almost 10 years down this path. And some days it feels like I know nothing. Because you meet the world champs, the guys who are black belts under the best black belts in the world, and they're teaching things or little details to a technique that I've seen 100 times taught a certain way. And this guy's telling me everything I know about that technique you learned as a white belt is wrong that I've been doing for 10 years, you know? So you have this eye-opening moment where, and it's funny in jiu-jitsu, brown belt, black belt, and beyond, like it always happens, you know, you're always like, wow, I didn't know the whole realm of jiu-jitsu even existed.
It's like a whole nother universe.
Exactly. And then to your point, it's like, I feel like I'm just hitting that stage in my jiu-jitsu journey now where I can really start asking those second and third order questions because I know what I didn't know before. Right. Like, oh, wow. Like I used to reach and grab the wrist in this position. You don't even do that anymore. The high level guys, no one's doing that. Right. And so, yeah.
How much fun is that though? You know, when you get to that point where you're just like, man, there's like, I could do this forever and still not know it all.
Well, man, I'll be honest with you. I've had a very interesting couple months. A lot of my life has changed, but specifically with jiu-jitsu because it was almost like, you know, when you look up at the stars for the first time, you're like, oh shit, wait, that goes on forever. It's huge. You know, you look at one direction in a telescope, but it's that in every single direction. It felt like that, like the dauntingness of how large and expansive jiu-jitsu or grappling or wrestling was because I didn't wrestle as a kid or in high school or college or anything. I didn't have I did karate a little bit.
It wasn't a lifelong journey for you up until this point.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't have that base that the guys who are, you know, competing at world level. And again, I know I'm not going to be there competing at that stage, but it's like, I'm envious of it. Right. So sometimes it's hard for me to be like, damn, I'm not going to be there. Damn, this sucks because there's so many aspects of jiu-jitsu or just grappling and martial arts in general, where I look at, you know, because of the internet, it does so many positive things sometimes. I mean, that's how you and I met, right? Because of social media, which is awesome. But I'll see techniques on my feed all the time, right? You got the Sambo guys, the judo guys. Mm-hmm. There's this aspect of martial arts. It's like, damn, will I ever even come close to understanding 10% of this, right? So I definitely went through this daunting phase recently of like, oh man, and I'm traveling the country training and I'm going to suck everywhere I go because it's this new experience and they're doing high level stuff. And then it sat with me. It's like, oh yeah, but you love the journey.
There you go.
So it did, and then it reignited my excitement about martial arts. But I definitely hit this trough recently where I was like, oh my God, it's way too big for me to handle. It's like, wait, I don't need to handle the whole thing. It's just like, just be on the path. You know?
That bottom there, you know, that curve that you just kind of like, we're making, the trough that you said, that is the most critical point. Like, what do you do? Like, cause there's a lot of energy there, right? Yeah. Right. And it's, what do you do with that energy? Cause it can get really misdirected. Oh yeah. Right. It's like, well, I need to do, and you start engaging in like a behavior or a decision-making process that's completely, you know, self-destructive or counterintuitive or outside the realm? Or do you focus it on what you just said, like you just come out the other side going, oh, you know, where there's this discovery process now and being cool with embracing that discovery process. So, and bringing it back to fitness, it's the same. Like the people that get the best results, and again, go back to the transformations you were asking about, even those people, I find that people that make these crazy transformations, like they drop 200 pounds or whatever, and they wind up, you know, with abs or whatever else. Those people, while it can be an amazing journey, like it's how they got there that's more important. And did they learn anything along the way? And what were those lessons that they learned? Did they learn that they need to suffer constantly and have to completely reduce, you know, just, you know, be constantly hungry and all of these things and just be miserable and not engage in social functions and spend more time working out than they do with their kids and all that stuff? Or did they learn, I can find a balance to this, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's not necessarily that important if I have abs or not, but how I feel, how I perform, how I recover, all of these kinds of things. And then also knowing, like, if I want to dial things up, if I had this, you know, this vacation I wanted to get ready for, whatever, then I plan for it and I do things the right way. Right. For sure. So it's part of the plan, but the journey, and you nailed it, dude. When you can embrace the journey and like, just go, man, this is what it's all about. And what a crazy place for you to be right now, traveling all over and doing it and living that journey. For sure, man. Well, and I think the secondary piece to what I just explained was, I was recently listening to a podcast on Andy Stumps, and this Green Beret puts on a course for people to go through, like, hey, fitness journey, we're going to test ourselves. We're rucking 20 miles through the night, all this stuff. Well, one of the guys, and he didn't know, in his course, had just recently had a knee replacement like 4 months ago and shouldn't have been doing this. You know, he didn't disclose it. And granted, it was one of his first classes, so he didn't have the forms to start learning through this business experience. Learning. Exactly. Yeah. Well, the guy
had to end up sitting out the whole course, but they were out in the middle of nowhere. So he couldn't go back into town. So he's just in the truck. Well, that guy, later he had a conversation with him, had actually the most profound experience because he was always a tough young athlete, powered through everything. And in that moment, in that truck for the next 8 hours, everyone's doing it, they accomplish it. He had that revelation of, could I have powered through? Maybe, probably not. And I would have been more injured, but it was more important for my strategic long-term health to sit this one out. And I'm okay with that. So I heard him say that recently. Last week I was walking around SF and it hit me as like, wow, at the same time I realized how big jiu-jitsu was and got frightened by it. Well, I can also be okay with just being along for the journey in the path I'm personally on because of my own injuries before and the way I need to handle my health to stay on the path. So it's like those two things coinciding at the same time, hearing that guy's story, like, wow, I need to do what's best for me long-term. I don't need to push through whatever next training session. It's okay for me to tap, and I'm learning that lesson all the time,
It's so I love Andy Stone. Cleared Hot's one of my favorite podcasts. Yep. I love his show. The point of that is interesting in that you're getting that from a podcast and you're making that connection, right, through somebody else's story. Yep. It isn't your story. No. And you're not trying to apply the same things. I mean, God forbid, you don't need a knee replacement to learn this lesson, right?
Exactly.
And then go through this brutal sort of evolution of whatever it is that they were doing. The point of that is like you're exposing yourself to these different things, right? And I know Andy's show, it's very specific. He talks with a very specific, type of person, and it's entertaining, and I get a lot out of it as well. It's not for everybody, right? But the point of this is like you're exploring all these other things, and as a result, it's helping you connect the dots in your life. And I think that is another big piece of this journey is that people need to open themselves up to what else is out there, and stop. And not be distracted by the noise and or the constant static that they're hearing about. This is the way it's supposed to be, or this is the way it can't be this way. Like, sure. Stop that shit. Like there are so many approaches to this. There is no one size fits all. It's just the flat out isn't. Yeah. And so, this diet, that diet, this exercise program, this thing over here, whether it's Red Dot or CrossFit or whatever else, look, they're all going to provide a certain level of value. It's what can you extract, in terms of value that's appropriate and suits your needs and goals. And the criteria you needed to suit you in order to ultimately be successul long-term, which was I think your point there, right? Like gives me longevity in this, not just because this is a good way. Like there is no, in the fitness world, there's nobody standing at the end of this fucking thing with the trophy. It's going to congratulate you for losing 50 pounds. Yep. It's never over, right? Yeah. It's never over. It's a constant process, right? And same with jiu-jitsu. Okay, you got the black belt. Now what? Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is in making a jiu-jitsu plug here, being like, I think jiu-jitsu could be for everyone. But I know a lot of times injuries or previous injuries, little things will prevent people from being on the mats. I recently sat down with Chrissy Campbell, and she was, prior Navy, CrossFit coach, super into fitness, and she's had 3 knee replacements. Mm-hmm. She can't bend her left knee more than 90 degrees currently. That's tough to do jiu-jitsu that way. And she still does jiu-jitsu. She's tough. Exactly. But and kudos to her pushing through and figuring out a way to make it work. But it can be done. So, and relating that to fitness, right? And I'm sure you've seen plenty of examples of this, and maybe you could share some with us. Is like, how do people? Maybe they come into your gym with an ailment or previous injury. How do you kind of work through that with people? I mean, like, what is this question? Yeah, what's your process? It's a great question because we get all walks, all kinds in here, and people. If you came out and if you hung out at Red Dot for a few days and you just took it all in, the stuff you're going to see out there might blow your mind. First, I think people are most shocked when they come in at like the diversity of the people that we have working out with us. Mm-hmm. Again, from high level athlete, and again, it's not a lot of them, but high level athletes to desk jockey, right? Yep. And then anything in between there, ages, it's men, it's women, it's all different types of things. And all of them are working on something very, very specific. And that's why they come to us, right? They've come to us like, hey, I need to do this. And I need some personal help with this particular thing. Can you help me? That starts with, how do you do it? Like, how do you figure out that way? You have to be working with somebody most of the time. And maybe that can be you. If you have this level of education or awareness, maybe you can figure it out on your own, but you have to be working with somebody that is an expert in the field. Like here's an example. There's a great example actually. So I just recently got a new puppy. So we have a Belgian Malinois, and she's just
beautiful animal.
Yeah, she's only 4 months old, and I've had plenty of dogs, and I've had Rottweilers, several of them, and I've had pit bulls, and I've had retrievers, Labrador retriever mixes, and whatever. And so I've had these working breeds, and so I kind of understand the breed. And I also have done lots of research on the Belgians, and I've waited several years to even pull the trigger on this thing because. I know how much work they're going to be. Like just a dog in general, a puppy in general. In fact, I didn't even want a puppy. I wanted one that was like a year old. And I wound up with a puppy. So it ultimately pulled the trigger, and I have this dog, but I did a lot of research. Like what's the drive level in this dog? Where do they come from? What are the issues that could be? Is this fair to this animal given the demands that they need or have?
So you can be a good owner.
So I can be a good owner, right? So I can, it's got to be a symbiotic. I want a pet, but I also want, a dog that's semi-protective of the home. I want a mascot here that can run around the gym and greet people, but I also need him to sit still when, I ask her to sit still. So there's some obedience stuff, maybe some protection stuff in there. So I have all these things I'm working with. And so the first thing I knew right away is I don't know shit about shit when it comes to these dogs. So like I know some stuff and I've had some experiences, but it's not this dog. I'm going to hire a coach. Great coaches hire a coach. So we got a coach. We got like the Jedi master of these things that are here in the local areas, a guy that we shoot with, Ricky, shout out to Ricky and Spectrum. But they so he comes to us. I'm like, how much does this cost? I'm making the investment. I'm going to have this dog for what? 12, 13, whatever years. And I want these things and I have these expectations. Number one, Ricky, are my expectations realistic? You know what he told me? He's like, they probably are. He goes, the obedience stuff is something that we can work on and that's pretty common and we can do that. But hey, this dog might not be okay with other dogs. He's telling me right now that my expectation might not be realistic.
Man, I love that question. Right? How often does anyone say, hey, are my expectations realistic? That's not a day one question.
Exactly.
That's a great one to take.
And so I think people are caught off guard by that when they're telling you like, this is what I want to accomplish, or I want to look like this. And you're going, well, hold on a second. Like, how realistic is this? Why do you think you can do this? Or I want it in this amount of time. Like, wait, it took you, I was interviewing this guy. We just dropped this thing. He's just full of knowledge bombs and one-liners. His name's Brad Jensen. He owns Key Nutrition out in Utah, Draper, Utah. And, we were having this little conversation and chuckling about the audacity of people that come in after 5 years of eating like an asshole, not sleeping right, not eating right. Like, they're stressed out of their brains and they want to completely change all that, and lose, 50 pounds or whatever.
3 months.
Or less. It's like, hold on. Like that is ridiculous. Yeah. It is absolutely ridiculous to even think that is completely irrational. And you can't tell somebody that, but you have to go, wait, pump the brakes here. So back to the dog situation. I'm just like, hey, Ricky, like what is it reasonable to think this, on the protection side of things, plus have a pet? He's like, look, man, we don't know. And we're not going to know. Yeah, we're going to have to evaluate this thing as we go. And as we go, I will give you insight to that, to what, based on my expert, opinion or where, my background and what I'm seeing. And here's what could happen along the way. Right. So there's first off, don't expect that, but here's some things you might expect. So as you're going down your journey, like if you can talk with somebody or get, again, if you're the black belt talking to the white belt, like, hey, as you're going, or the talking to the lady with the knee, like, I don't know if you can do this or not, but here's some things you might expect, like, or some things you can prepare for along the way that could influence this thing positively in your direction, but there are no guarantees, kind of thing. So there's just like, again, great coaches, I think, hire great coaches. For sure. They want to be with great coaches, but there's the. So
you'll get those people coming in with busted elbows, busted knees, but
all the time.
You can work with them in whatever way is possible.
Look, man, we have 2 people out here that are amputees. Right. Wow, cool. That work out on. We have several people that have full joint replacements, some crazy ones at that, some with multiple. We have some with partials. We have plenty of people that just have chronic, overuse injuries that have turned into things. There's lots of spine and hip things that we see on a regular basis. When I say that, I mean orthopedic, treated, surgically treated types of things. And they're doing all the things that they wanted to do when they came in. Awesome. We're finding a way to make that happen for them. Now, within with what's appropriate for them. Yep. Right. Like
for sure.
The dude that that's, below the knee amputee, he's not out there doing box jumps. Right. He might want to do those, but for him, that's just not going to happen for him. Like, could you do them one-legged and all that? There's some jackass out there who'll be like, dude, you could totally go and do that. But no, it's not appropriate. Right. It's not appropriate for him. For the person that was in the, super like devastating bicycle accident a couple of years ago, is literally paralyzed, where he is now compared to where he was then, like crazy improvements. Wow. But at the same time, I've had several people walk in the door like, dude, I just want to lose a little weight, right? Feel a little better. And we see that stuff happening all the time. But it all starts with a conversation of like, what is it you're trying to accomplish here and why? And let's just kind of peel back the layers of the onion so that we can put something together for you.
Man, I think if I ever open my own jiu-jitsu school one day, I'm going to take that approach that you have to fitness to that gym, because it's funny to me. It seems like someone who starts jiu-jitsu has to have already done that conversation prior to walking to the gym, right? Because of the format in jiu-jitsu school, it's like, you'll get the front desk person, or in good gyms, a coach will come up and talk to you and learn about you. But hey, you got a class to coach. There's 30 to 40 people in the class, depending on where you go, sometimes 10, sometimes 70, depends on what school you're going to and how it's run. But people to walk through the jiu-jitsu door have to have that conversation that you're talking about with themselves prior. And that's kind of my goal with Good for the Soul is, hey, enlightening people like, hey, you can get through that door and it's okay. But it sounds like that's the first thing that happens here at Red Dot, coming through the door, which is really cool.
And it's not practical for a lot of places. And I recognize, right. And that's why we're not that other thing.
Right.
Right. Like the most important thing I think you can make in helping somebody achieve their goal, whatever it is, again, whether it's Ricky and my dog Rue and Cece, yep. Right? Or me and you as you're my client or whatever, and you're also his jiu-jitsu athlete or whatever. We have to do what we're doing right now, which is have a connection. Yep. There has to be a connection made, and that takes personality, and that takes some personal investment, and it takes a high level of awareness. You need to be able to. The two most important skills I think you could learn as a business person or in a relationship or as a coach or whatever is learn how to question skillfully and listen carefully. And if you can do that, even for a few minutes, what you can glean from the time that you spend there could have massive impacts on this person's introduction into your school, right? And then introduction to their first time on the mat. Like, so by the way, guy hit me the other day. He's going to jiu-jitsu for the first time. I won't mention any names. He goes, dude, what do I need to be prepared for? And I'm like, hey man, first off, go with an open mind, right? Leave your ego at the door, right? And, just have a high level of humbleness when you go in, and don't expect that you're going in there for a fight, because my experience at the place that he's going is very respectful. And again, for anyone that's listening, this hasn't been mentioned yet. Maybe your listeners know this, but look, that's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is not where you're going. These are the most respectful, most humbling places I've ever been. There's definitely a disconnect, I think, from the outside looking in. But
luckily it's starting to go away, because everyone used to think, meathead fighters, and I had that stigma when I started. But it's the most humble, nicest people you're ever going to meet is a jiu-jitsu place.
So humble. I mean, and if you're not humble, if you go in, you're gonna get humbled. So one way or another. But the point of that was and then I gave him a couple of tips, like, dude, don't ever step on the mat with your shoes on. Don't ever ask a black belt to spar. Like those kind of sure. Don't be a total noob. But my point of that is like they're searching for like these. They're asking questions, but they're not always really well developed.
Yep.
Right. So you were talking about having that conversation before they come through the door.
Yeah.
So somebody might have a high enough level of that awareness to have that conversation with themselves, but most of the time it's going to be very limited. And it's going to be up to the person that's on the inside of that door, whether it's at the gym, at the school, right? Whether it's out on the field training the dog, whatever it is, they have to know what questions to ask to start.
Yeah. And
then you can develop from there. And again, our format is not for everybody. We do group training sessions here, and obviously now we have to cater more to the quote unquote masses.
Right.
But we still, everybody that comes in, if you're a noob, we'll call you that, if you come in a noob, we're going to spend a few minutes with you at the front of the session. And guess what? The other 7 people in that session, they're not pissed about that.
Right.
because they were that person once too.
Absolutely.
So there's a culture that's been started there. Yeah.
Can you say that one more time? Question skillfully and listen
Carefully.
That's so good. And what it made me think of is Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference.
I love that book.
Great book.
Yeah.
Well, as a business owner, when I was running my construction company, my younger brother actually got me to listen to it. You know, he was a captain in the Air Force active duty. He came out, we worked together for a while. He's doing great things now. And he got me to listen to it, I ended up listening to that book. And the funniest thing about it for me was I always thought my biggest responsibility as a coach, business owner was telling, like, hey, I have to, because it was part of my job, I have to teach new people. And by teaching them, I have to talk. So and then my own curiosity throughout my life, I've just always been cool. Let me ask this, ask that. So I would always ask, but I didn't know how to listen, you know? And so, listen carefully. That's such a great point, because you're going to learn more from listening than you ever are going to learn from talking. So keep that mouth shut and just listen and learn.
And that book, I listened to it as well on a road trip. It was a great book. And it did, like, for me, it just reiterated a lot of things that, you know, I do and some of the things that I don't do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right, man. Like if you just sit back and you do a better job at getting a person to come to the answers on their own. And I was going back to what I was saying before about feeling like I need to go back and apologize to the clients that I trained early on in my career. I think a lot of it is saying less. And when I first started, to be honest, and I think there's a lot of the information giving, if you're working in the jiu-jitsu realm with the white belt, right? Yep. You have to give them some stuff to work with, but how much, how much do you give them? I know I was really frustrated when I first started, because like, I need some offense here. What the fuck do I do? I'm in this guy's guard. What do I do? Well, the first problem is you got in his guard. So, so how do you get out of that? Oh, I got to work my way back out of this. So kind of that point. But here's my point. I think with the information giving, when I first started in this industry, and I think this is in a lot of places now based on the information highway that exists, whether it be social media, the Google, the interwebs, whatever else, right? We had to be information givers. Right. Because it wasn't as accessible as it is now. Now I find that as coaches, particularly here, we need to be more information interpreters. And that is, you have to question skillfully. You have to listen to the answers that you're getting back from your clients, because they are way more informed than they used to be. Now, it doesn't mean the information they have is any better.
Right.
It's not that there isn't enough information out there. The problem is there's too much of it. Right. But we have to be able to interpret what it is that we're hearing them say back to us, and then go, oh yeah. And so for that, you have to be an information getter. So I was going back, probably didn't make that point very well, but going back to Andy Stump's Cleared Hot podcast, and that you're going out there and trying to receive information in so that you can be better at interpreting your own journey or the things that you're doing in your own life. And I don't think people spend very much time doing that. Right. So as a coach, I think it's one of the most important things you can do. I mean, there's skills involved, but being passionate about figuring out a way to make a connection with somebody to help interpret what it is that they're telling you, and then maybe feed it back to them in a way that helps them learn it, not tell them, but helps them come to the light, Man,
you're talking about something that's so funny and very prominent in the jiu-jitsu world, right? Because of YouTube, because of all the information out there, Instagram, you get the white belt, blue belt coming in class, like, hey, I just saw this. We're going to do this.
The loop choke. Let's do loop choke.
All this crazy shit. And you're like, what? Hey, you don't know how to do that, or even have the foundation to attempt that move right now. Or you're also trying to teach everyone else on the mat. Like, let's handle this. And when I was coaching as a blue belt and purple belt, I would just, tell those guys, because they would ask me a question, hey, we're doing this and that. I'm like, no, man, stop doing that. And, and I would come at them as a prick at times. Right. And that was not questioning skillfully. Well, later on, as I started getting into the later years of coaching, where you started, hey, that same presence, that same attitude, you see people come in because they want more information. They're excited about jiu-jitsu. I don't want to be the one to kill their excitement by shitting on their idea of this cool move they saw. Well, so now I take the approach of questioning skillfully. Like, oh, hey, like, where did you see that? Okay, why do you want to apply that now? And then you work through, because then the light bulb will go off like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not ready for it. Or if I am, we can work on a different time, So, I love that. The questioning skillfully.
You articulated exactly what I was trying to say there. And you mentioned a really good point, and that is killing somebody's like drive to want to get it done and disappointing them, trying to lead by encouragement rather than criticism or whatever. There's a time and a place where you got to check somebody,
Yep,
but
for sure.
But at the same time, like, yeah, but you won't learn how to do that unless you know what they're hearing. So like you said, like you can get on Instagram and see a million different moves, or YouTube, and everybody's doing it. You'd be really wise as a coach or somebody that really wants to make a career out of this, or, go to the end, or, go all the way through your life with this journey, keeping up on that stuff, even the bad stuff. Just being aware of what's out there so that you can answer, I saw that too, man. Here's my takeaway.
For sure. Man, and there's nothing worse. 'Cause I'm sure at some point in your life it's happened to you, but it's happened to me in a couple of specific instances I can think about where I was excited about something, whether it was in the martial arts world or excited about cars. And I went, you're kind of doing the searching thing as a young man for a mentor in it. Hey, like, I'm excited about this. Can you help me? And they shut you down instantly. And you're like, damn, dude, like, I was excited about this thing that you're really good at. Like, why are you, obviously I don't know anything about it. Like, why are you shitting on me? And that's not going to help me get excited about it, learn from you in any way. So that's something I try to be cognizant of nowadays.
Oh man, that is a really hot subject for me. I would not be where I am in my life as a professional, as a person, as a man, if people, if I didn't have people in my corner, or people that helped me along the way. Excuse me. So I get people to reach out to me quite frequently. I just had a young man come in who works at a local spot here and wanted to ask some questions about the business model and kind of how we operate things. He's curious and he's looking to advance his career, and he just wanted to pick my brain a little bit. I will never say no to that. Cool. Like people hit me through the DMs or whatever, in our podcast, when we talk a little bit more about firearms instruction and fitness instruction in there, we talk about that very thing that you just said, people being shut down or being told that they're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think people need to be told that they suck or that they're wrong most of the time.
Correct.
Most of the time they're probably just misinformed or misguided. Again, going back to that misdirected energy, and they just need to be put on the right path. And shame on you if you have the skill and the knowledge to be able to do that and you're withholding. Fuck you, man. Like, sure. I just don't, and like the jiu-jitsu place, going back to the being humble and whatever else, like that's all I ever got, or get when I go and get on the mat. It's like, hey man, like I'm at a loss here. What can I be doing better here? I know you're not the instructor, like you're not, you're not the professor today, but I just felt this. Can you help me with that? What did you do? And just be willing to give up that information. So that withholding or trying to play everything so close to the chest, like you invented this shit, or like you like you're gatekeeping. Nah. Yeah. I think it's a bad practice.
99% of the time it's not the right move. And because I actually grew up Jewish and fairly religious from like 1st to 5th grade. I went to Hebrew school and I had a very religious component to my upbringing. After that, went to public school, like, oh, there's a whole other world out there. Cool. Like, this is the path for me now. But one thing I took from that was that my dad used to preach to us was humiliating someone is one of the greatest sins, because there's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from that. You're only feeding your own ego. You're shaming someone for what purpose, right? And because I remember the few times it's truly happened to me in my life, and from close friends at the time where, they don't necessarily, we're young kids or teens, whatever, they don't know they're doing it. But I remember that feeling like, wow, like this is one of the worst ever. So as a coach, as a leader, as a mentor, always trying to stay clear of that. Because I don't think there's anything worse, especially when you're wanting to start something new, as a business owner, as a leader yourself in your gym, like, you got to be cognizant of that. And also make sure your coaches are aware of that as well.
And sometimes it's a little bit tough. I mean, I find these days people are a little bit more sensitive, they're a little bit softer around the edges, and, they may feel offended, or the term humiliation may be a little bit, maybe used a little bit out of context versus a reality check.
Correct.
Is different than humiliating somebody. So I think it all comes with the intent.
Yes.
What is it you're trying to do? And if you're doing it with again, intent, there should be some kind of outcome that you would like to see out of whatever it is that you're doing. And if, as my mother always told me, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But, but the point of that is I mean, those are wise words to be getting from a parent. And I don't think are probably a lot of today's youth are getting those. Yep. And that's not really fair. That's a really blanket statement. Maybe they are. I'd like to think that that's the message that I'm sending to my kids. But at the same time, like there's all this other outside noise, and the ability for people to forget because of that noise so quickly that just happened. I mean, like a week from now, who's going to remember what happened yesterday, in the mainstream media news? Nobody.
No, for sure.
Nobody. So you can say and do whatever, and then move on. And so I think people lose sight of like, dude, you're impacting somebody's life. That's people are looking to you as an example, or whether you want to or not, or whether you believe that or not. So
it's a great responsibility impacting someone's life, along those Jordan Peterson lines, right? It's like, hey, like that's one of the greatest responsibilities you can have in this life, Who were your mentors as you're coming through the fitness community? You talked about your dad being one for you. Who else kind of helped get you where you are? Yeah.
So my parents were certainly there, as mentors for me from a health and fitness perspective. Again, mom and dad were always very healthy. They still are. Mom was a nurse, for her entire career, and dad was active and, whatnot for forever. So I got that. And then as I got older, I had some coaches, in my formable teen and years as a young man, on the football side of things and wrestling side of things, that I learned that they respected me, and that yelling, right, and a raised voice wasn't a bad thing. It was for them. It was like, I'm trying to get through to you here, and there was an intensity that I actually learned to enjoy, and that I'm kind of like that myself. So like, there's my oldest growing up playing soccer. Like I was that guy on the sideline with the big boy voice, yelling. But I was yelling encouraging things to all of the kids, not just one kid, or whatever. And because I enjoyed. My thing is like, if I wasn't getting yelled at, like something's wrong. I'm not doing a good job, kind of thing. So I had, and again, very good lessons along the way about how you treat people, what you do, how you hold your temper, when's the right time, when's not the right time to say or do something, those kind of things. And then as I got in my professional years, I really started to draw on, just some of the leadership that I saw around me. And I learned, when I say mentors, I think there's the mentoring, and that is learning the good things. And then there's also the other side of that, where you see a lot of people mentoring to maybe do things poorly. Mm-hmm. And I was in an old company. And so there were folks within that company that had been there a long time and done the grind. And it wasn't necessarily that I had like close relationships with them or whatever, but I watched how they worked, and I watched how they talked to people, and I watched how they engaged with customers and with more of the problem solving side of things. Like this one guy's name was Sonny Reeser, and he was he's like a West Coast VP and been in the industry for ages. Ex-Vietnam vet, just a tough guy who was always being active, and it was just like the epitome. Was like that's what you want to be if you're the CEO of a fitness company late in your years. I mean, the guy was in his 60s, always tan, lived on the beach, kites,
living the life, just doing the thing.
Yeah, doing his thing, riding his bike, whatever. But he had this uncanny ability to put people in the room, right, that could solve problems. He didn't have to say a word. Mm-hmm. Like he could just like, well, we're going to pull this guy in, and we want her over there. And he would kind of present the problem. And then this is where I would like to see this thing go. And you just let everybody work through it together. And so that's
good leadership.
Yeah, it's great leadership. And so I got a lot of stories about Sonny, and there were a couple other people there along the way. But, as I kind of got out, I started to kind of, what you learn is like your kids mentor you.
Okay.
Your kids start to teach you things that you didn't know. And if you're aware, if you have enough self-awareness, I started to learn that, like my daughter taught me a lot. My oldest taught me a lot of things, mentored me through process she didn't know, tough things and easy things and, the in-between things. But, I mean, I look to the people that are in my life right now, and there's no person that I kind of latch onto from like a professional perspective anymore. But, what I do is I try to hold everybody in the highest regard until they show me a reason not to, particularly with coaches. And I love being the white belt.
Yep.
So going to new places and getting myself involved in new things where, I can just kind of be the newbie. I don't mind being that guy.
That's the best. I mean, and that's cool, because that's the process of the journey, right? You started as a white belt in fitness, right? And you learn all the years, and then you get to here. It's like, cool, I can be that white belt guy and go learn, be okay with not knowing, learning, continuing that journey. It's never going to end. That's super exciting. So quickly, I saw yesterday, because you had posted on Instagram, where the origin of Red Dot, the name came from. I totally had assumed it was shooting related, clear, looking at the logo, but it hadn't. Can you share with it, with where it came from?
So the back end of this is so I shared this video that had been shot a couple of years ago, and this was prior to my being sort of more forward about my involvement in firearms training, and definitely before I'd taken it to the level that I've taken it now, and even sort of taken the podcast and the things that I'm doing. So it just wasn't something I really shared very much of, but it was always there.
Right.
So in terms of the term Red Dot, and where that came from, the way it came together was I kind of mentioned the multi-sport training thing, and I got involved with the group. I was living in SoCal, like on the beach in Hermosa, and we used to do this training down there. And so we had this group of clients that we were working with, and somebody thought I was maybe being a little too intense and taking the thing too seriously. For a lot of them, it was very much more social, but I was like, hey, no, you're out there to fucking win. Let's train. And the guy thought I was being a little bit maybe too focused on him. And he said, dude, man, he goes, I need you to back off a little bit. When I come here, it feels like, I got a laser sight, pointed at me by you, and could you just take it easy? And he was half joking, half serious, and he did it in front of the group. And that's how I know he was probably half joking, half serious. And the group kind of laughed. They're like, yeah, we were thinking the same thing. And I kind of chuckled or whatever. And then the point is that was the point, is that I wanted people to be focused, laser focused on whatever it was that they intended on doing for the time that they were spending with me. And from a trainer or coach's perspective, for me to meet them in the middle on that, so that we were getting their things accomplished. Cool. So whether you're a coach on my floor, you're a client on my floor, or a member of my staff, whatever, we need to be laser focused on the task at hand, and hence the term Red Dot Fitness. So when it came along, this is when I was working for somebody else. So when it came along for me to start my own business, it just kind of stuck. But the firearms piece of that was original. It just wasn't, I just wasn't like public about it before. Right. And it wasn't that I was ashamed. I didn't know where it fit. I didn't really know where it fit. Well, now it's call it serendipitous that it's kind of come to where it is now with where we're at.
Well, it's interesting too, being a business owner, regardless of the business, what you bring to the forefront publicly, because guns sometimes can be one of those topics where people love it, hate it, scared 100%. Of them, don't even want to talk to you because you have a picture of a gun on your profile, so you got to be aware of those things. Yeah. But it sounds like you've integrated in your life fairly well, and things are going all right.
Yeah, I will tell you this. So it doesn't change anything about what we've done here, what we do here at the gym. The podcast, Iron Sights podcast, obviously there's a, sort of a compare and contrast there with the old school versus the new school, Red Dot versus Iron Sights. That really started down kind of, again, the old school versus new school, and bringing some of the newer generation with the older generation together, and talking about fitness and health and entrepreneurship. And specifically, now we're doing a bit more talking about the firearms community. And the reason I'm doing that more now than I did is because more than ever, we're under fire. And what I mean by that is our Second Amendment rights are being challenged more than they ever have. And there's more misinformation, and there's more people rallying to take those rights away from us at a time more than ever where I think we need to be fighting back for those. And so now it's become, again, those that didn't know, before, that are members of the gym, they know now. But it's not what you're seeing out there on the fitness floor.
For sure.
Right? What we do in the gym isn't that, but the point is the same.
Yeah, no. And I love what you just talked about too, because Washington State, where I'm from, they just passed the magazine ban, no more than 10 rounds. Like,
congratulations on joining the club.
It sucks. And I thought, it's funny because I thought we were moving away from that, because once you're in, probably like fitness, probably like jiu-jitsu, and especially like the gun world, right? Once you're in it, you realize like it's not this fearful thing. Everyone who doesn't know, everyone who's ignorant about it thinks it's, this wild world where it's like, no, it's actually a pretty normal thing. Most of the country has them, and so from the ignorance legislation being passed to that affects so many people unrealistically, it's kind of a shame. So I think it's to your point, super important to be preaching that, hey, firearms can be safe, used properly, talking about it more, getting it out into the limelight, because the more people doing that, the better for those rights, for sure.
I appreciate that. It's just the community, interestingly, is as hard as it's being, fought against right now, that is 2A, the back end of this is the community is growing at an exponential rate.
Yep.
The acceptance of it and normalization of it is coming at an all-time high. And the firearms industry is exploding from a financial and economic perspective. From the gear industry to the media industry, there are so many things here. And to your point, just like on the jiu-jitsu side of things, my only experiences since I've been more active and now proactive in the community have been nothing but positive.
Yep.
I mean, we are talking amazing people, intelligent, articulate people. Now, to your point, like there's a ton of ignorance that surrounds it within the community as well.
Yep.
And, just like anything, there's good and bad. I think there's, I kind of look at things on a spectrum, right? You got all the way over here and you got all the way over there. And then there's the people in the middle that are, some are very fearful. Like, I don't want to be part of that way over there. Like, that is just too much for me. And then there's others like, no, I'm trying to get over there to that extreme side.
Yeah.
People are trying to figure it out. And I really think it's important that we come together as a community to have conversations, intelligent ones.
Yep.
Right. And to welcome new members in, right. To maybe check those that have been gatekeeping at one end of the spectrum,
Yep.
right. To also check the people at the other end of the spectrum that are very, very extreme, maybe in their views and their language, and go, look, man, it's America, feel, do, whatever you want there, but understand what the ramifications are, of acting or behaving or saying or stating or doing whatever those things may have on the remainder of the community. When we should be coming together, not dividing.
For sure.
And so that's what we're spending as much time as we can doing that's relevant.
Yeah, no, man, I dig that. And I've been in real life situations where I've needed to use my jiu-jitsu for self-defense and protecting those around me. And I've, with Good for the Soul, trying to preach, hey, self-defense. And a part of that is firearms. If you're, out of shape, if you're a smaller individual, sometimes having a tool is going to be the right move for you. Sometimes. And so, just like, trying to get people excited about jiu-jitsu fitness, how do you get people excited about firearms? Like, what is that first step for that new person going in and like, wait, I hear about guns. A lot of people have them like, they're frightened. What's step one?
Yeah, I think that's a really great conversation. I think that's the gap we're trying to bridge right now, because what they're hearing, usually step one in terms of their information they're gathering about firearms, is anything they're hearing from the media, which tends to be very, very one-sided. Mm-hmm. It's, it's gun violence. This, for every bullet is one dead child. It's never anything good. We're never talking about anything but the tragedy that comes out of a particular situation that happens to involve a firearm. Right. There's so much of that, so many tragic situations happen on a daily basis, but it seems to get highlighted, and there's no shortage of politicians that will never let any sort of quote unquote crisis go to waste. Right. So when one of these things pops up, there's always some legislation that's getting pushed or always. It's just a hot topic right now. So I think you have to go to the right places to have those conversations, and there's not a lot of them. Right. So usually that starts with somebody that has a gun. Yep. Right. And then I'm going to go back to my spectrum, right, left, and middle, whatever. I don't mean that, politically on the right and the left. I just mean there's these opposite ends.
You're either super
the pendulum swings. Yep. And they may not be articulate. They may not be very good at explaining that to you. And that interaction could be the deciding factor for them going away. And then all they need is to have their negativity reconfirmed through something I see in Instagram or on the news at night. So I think what we need to be doing is normalizing the conversation. I would think we need to be having this at a much higher level instead of guns be gone, guns be gone, guns be gone. We need to be addressing the fucking issue. Yep. And I get really fired up about this because while gun manufacturing, gun parts, ammo, those are all things, but firearms as an industry is not the problem. Right. Society is a problem, right? Our culture around violence is a problem. Our cultures around and society and what our acceptance level or tolerance level is to crime is the problem. And what we tolerate, we're essentially accepting, and we're giving permission to. And we need to stop tolerating a lot of things and have more intelligent conversations at a higher level about how to resolve the problems. And mental health is a massive issue. And it's not mass shooter out there that hasn't had a massive health issue,
right,
and has been passed through the system. You know, so those are things. And there are people that are having these conversations. Just one example, by the way. There are many people that are having these conversations, and on this platform, I'm getting the opportunity to have these conversations with some really intelligent, passionate, people that are coming to it with a very strong, but informed and heartfelt most of the time message about how to kind of make these things better. And it's not a conversation that's just going to happen in one sitting.
For sure. It's a constant conversation. I mean, that's going to go on forever and has since the foundation of this country, because the left, right, people are trying to take rights away. People are trying to keep them, there's always going back and forth. So I think it's super important, but you brought up something that's very relatable to I think every industry again is, hey, if that first person's interaction with firearms is just a buddy who has one and they go to the range and they have a bad experience, or they're talking to them about it and they're so far down the rabbit hole and one of those gatekeepers that it kind of pushes them away from it. It's like, that's going to be super unfortunate, and because it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. I was just going to liken it to fitness. If you go in and you freaking roll with the wrong person on your first day in jiu-jitsu, you're never coming back. And I've been responsible for that before, and I feel super bad, and I've tried to bring some of my friends into jiu-jitsu and they had a bad experience. It's like, why did that happen? I had to look at it like, okay, like this was the incorrect procedure to bring someone in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, same thing. It's the same in fitness. Yeah. And I relate a lot of what I see in the firearms industry right now, particularly through social media, to where fitness it was, maybe 10, 15 years ago, in terms of a lot of bad information being passed out there. There's very low barrier of entry of becoming an instructor. People can kind of say they're experts based on their resumes or their backgrounds or whatever else. And that's a problem, and it's going to have to be policed. There's not an overnight solution to this. So I think the community as a whole needs to hold a higher level of accountability to the people within the community. Yep. Right. And I think within that means these ends of the spectrum coming together to create conversation hence the podcast, to why civilians need to be talking with military or ex-military that are learning and doing and training different ways, and law enforcement and with military, and law enforcement with civilians, and having these open dialogue questions, so that there's more access and provide, so that we can provide more access to healthy conversation, right? And good information. And that includes instruction. And I honestly believe, because what we saw in the fitness industry was this very same thing happened with coaching. And over time, so what you saw initially was like the professionals have been in it a while, me included, were just like, what is this shit? This guy doesn't know two things about fitness. He's got a shirt off. He's got abs. He's dancing around. He's got 40,000 followers. And now everybody thinks he's a fitness expert, and he's got some diarrhea tea he's selling, to everybody, right? That's kind of where firearms has been lately, right? Because there's this huge pie, right? And everybody can get in, and there's a low barrier of entry to get into it. And you can kind of say anything. And again, there's a lot of money being spent. It's a huge industry, and you can kind of get away with it for a while. And it took years for the fitness industry, and still there's awful, like, ridiculous. Right, you're going to end up with the McDojos of fitness and firearm industry. That's a great way to look at it. And so what happened was ultimately the industry was pushing back on it, going, dude, don't listen to this jerk off. Like this is the problem. Like, we need to stop this. Please, please, please don't listen to this. And I'll try to provide you a better pathway. I'm not saying I'm the only way, but here, try this instead, or maybe look at it differently. Right. And then you had finally consumers, because the industry was doing a bit of a better job connecting with the consumer and trying to provide that education, start to hold these people accountable, going, oh, I've seen this big jackass before, right? Like, I don't need this. And when the next one comes along, it's like, no. And now you're seeing a lot less of it than you did. Yep. We're going to have the same evolution in the firearms industry, and, the world of preparedness and these things. We hopefully it gets cleaned up a little bit quicker. And we take a little bit higher level of responsibility than maybe the fitness industry did, with in terms of coming together, because there's no regulating bodies or anything like that. So it really is going to be about the people that really care coming together, trying to do what's right, being humble about it, right? Asking the right questions, and I think cross-pollinating, which is really important. And again, no gatekeeping. Well, I like what you brought up of, hey, the military guys are going to talk to the civilians, be talking to the cops. Like, everyone's going to need to have that open line of communication, because everyone has something to share. and you're going to make the world society more comfortable in the US with firearms if we're all open about it, all talking about it.
300%. And why wouldn't we want to do that? I think this is the bigger conversation. Like, okay, so I understand you're a war fighter, man. You just spent 20 years of your life in some of the hottest, most dangerous offensive places, in the world. And that is one type of training. And I want to hear about it and I want to learn what you're doing, but I'm not in that situation. I'm in a different type of hot situation. I'm not on the offensive. I'm trying to be on the defensive.
Right.
Yep. And you have some skills, but so do I. I've now learned some things. Like, you were taught a certain way, and a lot of these guys will tell you in my conversations with them, like, they learned some pretty dogmatic shit. When they got out of their sort of either whether it's LEO or military, that initial training, they then went to the field, and then there was somebody there that put their arm around them and went, yeah, well, so I know what they just taught you, and that shit's so outdated and antiquated now. Like, I'm going to have to reteach you. So I need you to be on my hip, right? And don't get killed.
Yep.
That kind of a thing. And so on the flip side of that, so they ought to know, like, that even the things that they know there are going to be different in different situations. So how do we help people in all walks of life within our community understand situational awareness, like firearms, preparedness, how to not get yourself in a situation, how to get yourself out of there without ever having to buy or to bring a firearm to the table? Is it, jiu-jitsu again is one tool. Like, is that the answer? Absolutely not. Can it be part of the equation? Totally. Right. You can build self-confidence. It can also build, your ability to have a conversation and talk your way out of a problem before it ever starts. Which again,
it's a big pie, and there's a lot of slices to it, and I like the thing you talked about is situational awareness, but people, I would say the number one most important thing, because if you're not aware of your surroundings, like, you don't have your head on a swivel, or you walk around at night alone, not paying attention what area you're in, those are going to be the things that's going to keep you out of the most troubled situations, and one of the points that I think people forget about a lot of time is who they're learning from potentially. The LEO guy, the former Spec Ops guy, they learned, to your point, a very offensive what they're going to go do, being a warfighter. Like, that's awesome.
They have to go to the fight.
Right. Yeah. Well, civilians in the United States, if you're carrying a firearm, it's most likely going to be a Glock 19 pistol or whatever firearm you're carrying. And it's going to be a defensive situation. You're coming from concealed to using that firearm. Like, that's what, as a everyday person defending your personal self or family, that you're going to do. Learning room clearance, all that stuff's going to be super fun, and watching YouTube videos on it is awesome. But it's like, knowing how to actually use your pistol and defensively and from a concealed carry, like, that's going to be actually one of the most important aspects, at least from my opinion, because I look around me, I'm like, well, dude, we're all like normal people working jobs, living in cities, whatever. It's like, that's where we're going to need our firearm instruction. Running and gunning, as much fun as it is, and it's, again, another slice of the pie. Well, that's not the big slice right now. So
there's shooting, and then there's tactics, right? And so there's that part of it too. And I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but what I like to do is go out and train and learn, going back to my fitness journey and my experience, and always looking for, who can I draw from and who can I take these things from. I think if some of these people at certain ends of the spectrum maybe looked at it from a little bit broader perspective, humbled themselves a little bit and go, hey, what can I learn from those civilians that are training over there in that particular realm, and how they train, and how that might impact how I teach people, or what I could teach them, and maybe rethinking my thought process. Because I have to tell you, I've had lots of experiences now where it's like, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. You are thinking way differently than I would have ever thought about that, and you're not wrong. Wow, that's interesting. And you brought up the point. This is mostly defensive, and there's a lot of things. But here's the thing, like, there is no like one way, right? Correct. People are going to learn different ways based on access, based on availability, based on their ability to learn, and those kind of things. And standing in front of paper, shooting at paper at 5 yards, well, that's going to give you a certain amount of skill acquisition, but that isn't reality. So how do you start to bring in the reality, those other real pieces, like, appropriely? And so we're starting to see some crazy shit happen. Like, come on, man.
Where it swings the other way.
Exactly. Yeah. So same with, like, that was the thing with fitness. Oh, like, let me get this Bosu and this fucking band out and this thing here. And this thing, you got people doing circus tricks, and they don't have the foundation, the fundamentals to even do the basic movement or the basic skill. So those are the types of things that I think need to be covered and are going to continue to evolve. And I think the conversations should, for the actual usage of firearms and the different applications, those are where they need to be. But there is a larger conversation that needs to be had about, you know, what our rights are, why we have them, and the realities behind that. And, you know, get some people talking at a higher level that can represent the needs, quite frankly, of the people in the middle of that spectrum I was just talking to you about. Because
80%.
We're not doing that. Like our government isn't doing that. Our current commissions aren't doing that. Yeah. The NRA certainly isn't doing that. Like we some things need to change. And I think through creating more conversation, hopefully we'll start leading down that path.
For sure, man. I dig it, bringing awareness. Lastly, one of the things I like to ask people in the jiu-jitsu world, because from my own personal experience, I know once you get so deep down that rabbit hole, I used jiu-jitsu for my crutch in fitness. Like we talked about, I was like, oh, well, if I'm doing enough jiu-jitsu, I'm going to be fit. Well, that's not true. Plenty of injuries. So I need to take my fitness more seriously. Well, we also use it as a crutch for our mental health. Hey, if I'm here training, I feel better. This is great. And it's a very effective tool and it works great. But if it's your only thing and you're leaning on that crutch very hard, well, a lot of people found out during the lockdown, you know, they relied on that too much. You know?
I did.
Yep. Same here. So what I love to ask people now is completely, you know, I ask them typically related to jiu-jitsu, but for you, completely removed from fitness, from firearms, from the things everyone sees, you know, on social media. What do you do that's good for the soul?
Yeah. So I have there's a couple things, but I have a nightly ritual, which is I take a walk. Right. Cool. And so every night, like I basically, I eat dinner with the family, whatever. Now we got the dog, so I'll take the dog out for a walk, and I just get inside my own head. And what I kind of do is I just kind of down regulate from the day. There's a couple of things I'll do. So now I got the dog on my side. Sometimes I'll throw on a podcast, or even one of my own podcasts to listen back, like where can I improve, or where's some subject matter I think we could have handled better or whatever. So I'm kind of habit stacking. I'm getting my steps in for the day. Cause you know, like sometimes I own a gym, but I could be sitting at the desk all day like any other desk jockey here. I do have a dirty little habit with cigars, and so I'll grab a cigar sometimes and just kind of do it that way. So for me, it's finding solitude. And that's what I do for my soul. Like solitude is extraordinarily important for me. Now, the challenge that I have with it and just kind of going through all the things I just told you is sometimes you need, this might sound like counterintuitive, but you need a little distraction to find solitude in some certain areas. Like meditation is not something I've ever been really good at doing. As much as I've tried to practice, I have a really tough time doing that. And I do need quiet in order to do it at any kind of level. I live in the middle of the city, right? So I'm like right downtown. There's traffic, there's sirens, there's horns, there's dogs barking, there's people passing, there's all kinds of stuff. When I'm out walking, I have to be situationally aware. I live in downtown. There's stuff that I need to be aware of. But the solitude of just kind of breaking away from people and choosing the interactions that I have, like not, you know, being attached to my email or be attached to, you know, a potential conversation or whatever. Finding solitude on a daily basis is something I try to find at some level. But if I really want to dig deep, it's getting away. Like it's getting out into nature, and it's quiet like there's birds chirping. There's the wind going through the trees, right? There's the sound of the water going down the river, or, you know, in the lake, or, you know, whatever. Cool. That is my jam.
That's your spot.
You put me in nature, dude. Like you'll see a completely different person.
Man, I love that. It gives you that ability to really fucking chill out, decompress, and be with yourself, man.
That's it, dude.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah. Dude, man, I super appreciate the collaboration. This has been awesome. I really enjoyed this.
I'm honored that you came down here, man, that you reached out. I mean, I love the journey that you're on, and a little jealous at some level. Like I think it'd be
well, thank you,
awesome.
Man. I'll live it up for both of us.
You're in a great spot. I want to hear about all the experiences you had at some of these other jiu-jitsu studios while you get out, or the schools while you travel through town. But my pleasure, man.
Cool, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Take care.